My grandfather is the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Checking the Accounts. Sarah threw a pile of account books to Franz. Franz, there are problems with all of these. The accounts are not clear and there are errors in the audit, Sarah said unhappily while holding a lollipop in her mouth. Just these 15 books, there is a deficit of 102,182 guilders, 8 groschen, and 6 pfennigs. Franz looked at the pile of accounts and Sarah's eyes that were swollen like rabbits. Franz felt that it was necessary to organize a team of accountants. He thought that 2 people could do it slowly. He wanted to save some money and didn't want Archduke Karl to have too much trouble with his butlers. It seems that he was wrong. Since the death of the old butler left to Archduke Karl by his father 20 years ago, no one has checked Archduke Karl's family accounts. The above figures can no longer be described as shocking, they are simply sensational. Franz and Sarah spent a week checking and comparing the accounts of 1,821, and there was a deficit of nearly 1 million guilders on the surface. Moreover, according to the horizontal comparison with the accounts of the royal territory, the accounts of the Teffi family, and the accounts of the Mettner family, it can be determined that the actual gap is even larger. This is no longer a matter of face or not, this is simply a crime, it is robbery in broad daylight. Franz did not make it public just to avoid alerting the enemy, but he had already informed his cousin Albrecht. We first asked the stewards of Archduke Karl's family in various places to come to Vienna in the name of Archduke Karl. At that time, we will use the power of the city defense forces under Albrecht to catch them all in one fell swoop. Finally, Albrecht will come forward to solve the mess. After all, most of the stewards of Archduke Karl's family are also nobles or capitalists, and they are also members of the ruling class in the Austrian Empire. If Franz really arrested them all and confiscated their homes one by one, it would probably cause a riot. As the eldest son of Archduke Karl, Albrecht knew these people. Archduke Karl was not allowed to come forward because Archduke Karl was old and easily emotional. Most of the people to be punished have worked for Archduke Karl's family for more than 10 years or even decades. Some of them were even known to Archduke Karl when he was a child. But Albrecht is different. He has been raised in the army since he was a child and is not close to the stewards in the family. And as the future heir of the family, he has the absolute right to deal with this group of people. Moreover, Albrecht is the commander of the Vienna City Defense Army, and his soldiers are all of noble origin. When seeing the stewards and servants of the Archduke Karl's family who are of noble origin, not only will they not be afraid, but they may look down on these country nobles. If they really start to fight, they will never show mercy. As for the recovered property, Albrecht has signed an agreement. He expressed his willingness to establish a foundation and give it to Franz to manage. Like his father, Albrecht has no concept of money. What's more, in order to truly understand the combat effectiveness of the soldiers, he often eats and sleeps with his soldiers. Generally speaking, the annual expenses of a noble in Vienna are around 200 shields. Albrecht did not know how to enjoy life like his father did. When he was in the army, his annual expenses were less than 100 guilders. Most importantly, Albrecht felt that his father's tragedy was caused by not having a good relationship with the emperor. So Albrecht hoped to have a good relationship with Franz. In Franz's view, it was very important to have a good relationship with the future first general of the Austrian Empire. So the two hit it off and skipped Archduke Karl himself. Franz threw a box to Sarah. Eat less sugar and be careful of tooth decay. Let you rest for 3 days. Sarah took the box and shook it. What is this? Open it and you will know. Sarah opened the box and found a metal hose inside. What is this? Toothpaste. How did you put it in? This is a French invention of metal hose, but this French guy didn't know what his patent was for. I spent 2,000 francs to buy his patent, Franz said with some pride. How do you use this? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Just squeeze it with your hands and the toothpaste will come out. Remember to brush your teeth frequently, you eat so much sugar. If you get cavities, you will suffer. Humph, why are you so proud? Toothpaste has been around for a long time. You can make money by putting it in a tube. I don't believe it, Sarah said nonchalantly. Then let's wait and see. Chapter 52, Albrecht's Ambition. In the summer in Vienna, there was a drizzle in the sky. In a manor on the outskirts of Vienna, half of the area of the manor was covered with vines. The moisture in the air mixed with the aroma of grapes, and there was an indescribable sweet smell that made people intoxicated. The lawns on both sides of a path were neatly trimmed, leading to an ancient and majestic old house. In front of the mansion, there were a number of fancy carriages inlaid with gold and silver flowers parked in front of it, giving people a feeling of being out of place. Not far away, there were more teams driving here, some with a large group of attendants. On the other side, there was a small villa on the hill. Under the eaves of the villa, Franz, Taffy and Albrecht were sitting on a recliner leisurely looking at the direction of the mansion. Maya pouted while giving Franz a massage. Maybe it was because she was unhappy about losing the game of cuckold, or maybe it was because she was unhappy about giving Franz a massage after losing. If she wins, Franz will have to give her a massage, which seems to be a loss. Maya silently calculated in her heart whether she should win or lose next time. The one who gave Taffy a massage was his family governess and nanny, Baroness Lanchester. She was a descendant of the French nobility. Her parents fled during the French Revolution and settled in Vienna and never returned to France. She was a French who did not consider herself French. She and her husband both worked for the Taffy family, so they were relatively reliable. Albrecht was a relatively self-disciplined soldier, or a bit anti-human. He hated all enjoyment and even felt guilty. The halo of son of Karl almost made him breathless. He was sent to the most rigorous aristocratic school since he was a child, but he was always the first. He was the first in every subject taught in the school, even in fighting. Later, he entered the military academy as the first in the school and still maintained the first place. At first, he thought he was perfect, because all the teachers of all subjects knew him and could call him by name. He was gifted and worked hard, and soon surpassed his peers to become a leader in the military field. Even the teachers who taught him had to prepare enough homework in front of him, fearing that they would be looked down upon by this student. Under his brilliance, the efforts of all his classmates seemed futile. He received more honors in 1 year than many professional soldiers in their entire lives. Every teacher in the military academy knew him, but not because of his talent or his diligence. It was because his father was the Grand Duke of Tuscan, the most outstanding general in the history of the Austrian Empire. Prince Eugen belonged to the Holy Roman Empire era, and the first person to defeat Napoleon in a large-scale battle. His father's statue stands on the Heroes' Square in Vienna. In the mouths of others, the son of Karl. He also felt very honored at first, but as he grew older and was shrouded in the halo of his parents for a long time, his efforts seemed pale and powerless. No matter what he did, he would be said to be worthy of being the son of Karl. Albrecht fell into self-doubt. Maybe I didn't do well enough. He felt that he lived a very depressed and unfulfilled life, while others envied him and thought that his life was really happy. As soon as he was born, he seemed to have reached the end of other people's life's efforts. He seemed to have everything, including money, fame, status, power, and talent. However, Albrecht fell deeply into autism. If anyone dares to bully you, you fight back. If you win, you will get a reward. If you lose, I will find the best doctor for you. If the other party does not play by the rules, Dad will support you. How much? Tell me a number. As long as it can be solved with money, it is not a problem. In the Austrian Empire at that time, there was nothing that Archduke Karl's face and money could not solve. Educating children like Archduke Karl usually makes children become unlearned and unskilled dandies or useless vases. Of course, there are exceptions, like Albrecht, who is prone to autism and has developed anti-human self-discipline. He uses the most stringent discipline to demand himself, hoping that one day he can get out of his father's shadow. Now he is trying to do so, such as getting along well with the future emperor. The contradiction between Archduke Karl and the late emperor is well known to passers-by. If you have to rank a list of the most annoying people in the heart of the late emperor, the first one is naturally Napoleon, the second one is probably his father Archduke Karl, and the third one is naturally his unconventional uncle Archduke John. Albrecht felt that this future emperor was definitely not an ordinary person. At a young age, he could understand the accounts that gave him a headache, and he could also accept people like Karimi who were ambitious. The most important thing was that he blackmailed his father for 10 million guilders. Perhaps only such a person could be a good emperor. In Albrecht's eyes, only when Austria became strong could he fight and surpass his father. If it was still like this, the emperor would have to rely on Met to protect his safety with his mouth. For a general who wanted to achieve fame, this was more painful than killing him. The latest novel was first published on 69 Shuba. So now he will spare no effort to support Franz and do what he described. As long as it can make the country rise again, what does money matter? The strongest loser is respected, like Hannibal and his father, but Albrecht does not want to be a loser. I have something to do recently, so the update volume is a bit less, please forgive me. Chapter 53, Overcoming Difficulties Together. Archduke Albrecht, you have so many stewards in your family. The followers they brought could form an army, Taffy was just complimenting. Maya also interjected, look at those people carrying guns, riding war horses, and holding their heads high. They don't look like servants at all. Everyone looked at Maya and said nothing. Baroness Launceston covered her mouth and tried not to laugh out loud. Albrecht continued his usual style, they are indeed military veterans, retired elite veterans from various armies. They are good at fighting, but they can't do anything else. If they were really put into society, they would definitely be a group of scourges. So I just found them a job. The family doesn't lack this little money, my goodness, these people are really big-hearted. If they were put in the East, even if others knew it was unintentional, it would be a good ending to be killed by jealousy. By the way, why do the stewards of Archduke Karl's family have so many followers? They seem to be elite soldiers in the army. Can the city defense forces in Vienna really deal with them? Franz now wished that he had buried hundreds of kilograms of explosives under the mansion and wiped them out. However, the continuous rainy weather has lasted for more than 10 days, and the water level of the Danube has risen a lot. Even if the explosives were buried, they might not work. According to Franz's original plan, he should have gathered these people together and held a meeting. At the meeting, he should have appealed to their emotions and reason, and pretended to be cool. If that didn't work, he could use the account book as evidence to force them to surrender. If someone was desperate, that would be great. He could call the city defense army in and kill him on the spot to make an example of him. Then he would be done and could celebrate with his friends. Why did it become like this? All 87 stewards of Archduke Karl's family from all over the country rushed to Vienna within a month. All the stewards brought more than a dozen or 20 followers, and there seemed to be a lot of money in their accompanying items. It's not necessary for one person to bring more than a dozen or 20 followers, but all the stewards did so. Now Archduke Karl is in a manner outside Vienna, like an army gathering. Most of the stewards of Archduke Karl's family know each other, so it is inevitable to have some warm-up when they meet. Hey, Marcus. What do you think the Archduke is so anxious to summon us for? The speaker is Earl Winster, the steward in charge of the Bohemian region. He is only in his 30s, the youngest of all the regional stewards, and also the fattest. Earl Winster, haven't you heard? The Archduke was blackmailed by the royal family for 10 million guilders. The one who answered him was Earl Marcus, the steward of the Lombardy region, a slightly fat middle-aged man. Why do these royal families not fight foreigners, but bully in their own nests all day long? This must be a bad idea from our prime minister. This damn politician has no good intentions. If it weren't for his slander, the Archduke wouldn't have. The one who interrupted and complained was Earl Kodran, who came from a Croatian military family. Kodran was once a promising colonel, but he had a fierce conflict with his Hungarian boss on the issue of suppressing bandits. He believed that in order to eliminate the bandits in the Kingdom of Hungary, Hungary and Croatia must act together. But his superiors did not intend to use Hungary's power to help Croatia suppress bandits, nor did they intend to let Croatian minority soldiers run to Hungarian land to suppress bandits. Kodran wrote to the Imperial Army Department many times to request joint action. By chance, he caught a small group of horse bandits who crossed the border from Hungary to Croatia to rob. After interrogation, those people actually admitted that they were serfs on a noble's land. The owner promised that he would give them freedom as long as they could rob enough property. He followed the clues and found that the mastermind behind the scenes was his superior. He wrote a letter of denunciation and took the evidence to the Hungarian parliament to report his superior. As a result, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison because the inferior accused the superior. 5 years later, he was released with a mediation of Archduke Karl. But in 5 years, he lost his military position, his future, his property was confiscated, and even his family died in a sudden fire. Even his enemy disappeared a year ago because he was exposed for embezzling Count Zuchni's project funds. Kodran could only ask Archduke Karl to find him a job so that he could survive. After that, he was sent to Transylvania. Because he got along well with the local governor, General von Karl, He was appreciated and gradually became the person in charge of Archduke Karl's industry in Transylvania. Conrad was not young anymore, but he was still very angry. In his eyes, nothing was more important than Archduke Karl's affairs. "Shut up, you are getting more and more presumptuous. This is Vienna, not your country shack. Don't cause trouble for the Archduke, understand." The one who gave the lecture was a white-haired, majestic old man with a cane. The old man's name was Randbell. He was once Archduke Karl's personal soldier and had fought on the battlefield with Archduke Karl. He was wounded and retired in the Battle of Aspern-Essling, and has been managing Archduke Karl's industry in Graz. "Grandpa Bell, don't be angry. We are all speaking up for the Grand Duke. He has fought for the Empire all his life. In the end, he only has the title of honorary marshal. It's not worth it." The youngest Earl Winster spoke first. Count Karl and Count Marcus did not speak, because both in Lombardy and Transylvania, there were secret police under Milton. It was indeed inappropriate to say this. It was natural for Archduke Karl to say it himself. But for these outsiders to say this, they might be suspected of instigating the royal family to start a civil war. Everyone present here knows better than you what the Archduke has done for the country. How can you, a little kid, point fingers? Randbell continued to question harshly. The Archduke is not well off now. Do you all have the money? Winster smiled awkwardly. Of course, Grandpa Bell. Our Bohemian region has poor land and scarce resources. But I'm ready to make a profit of 1,000,000 guilders in the next 10 years. Count Marcus cursed in his heart that he was actually overtaken. Uncle Bell, the Lombardy region that I am in charge of has not had an easy time in recent years, especially Venice has opened trade with Egypt. We are all losing money now. I can advance 5 years of profits, 500,000 guilders to help the Archduke tide over the difficulties. The latest novel is first published on Luigi 9 Shuba. The other managers also said that the land in their area was barren, the market was sluggish, and the personnel maintenance expenses were high. But even if they sold everything they had, they could make a profit in 3 to 5 years, which would be no problem. The least was 3 to 5,000, and the most was 70 to 80,000. Hearing this, Old Bell nodded frequently and said, "Thank you for your hard work. I believe we can overcome the difficulties together with the Grand Duke." At this time, someone said, "Condiran, why are you silent? How much do you want to pay and how many years? If it weren't for the Grand Duke, you would still be tying straw in prison now." Yes, you can't lose your conscience. Transylvania was developed later, so it is still a barren land in the eyes of everyone. Many people were making a fuss with the mentality of watching a joke. Condiran said, "Transylvania is one of the poorest provinces in the empire. I can only take out 500,000 guilders of profit this year." Chapter 54 I have a backup plan. What? 500,000 guilders? Where did you get so much money? Did you really find a gold mine? All the managers were full of jealousy and envy. You have to know that the biggest pillar industry in Transylvania at this time is gold mines. The advantage of Transylvania's gold mines is that they are shallowly buried and rich. Even if it is just a small gold mine, the annual output can reach about 1 ton, which is equivalent to 10 million Austrian Rhine guilders. But the most enviable thing is that Archduke Karl is a member of the royal family, and there is no tax on gold mines found on the territory of royal members. You have to know that the tax rate for mining gold mines is usually around 50%, and the local officials around you will stare at you like wild dogs. As long as you make a mistake, you will be arrested and your property will be confiscated. Even if you have not committed a crime, you will be eaten, taken, blocked, and asked for by various methods. In short, don't think about living a peaceful day. Just when everyone was daydreaming, Condiran spoke again. There is no gold mine, but the income from the Transylvania steel plant. It is not the harvest season yet, so the income from the real estate cannot be obtained. Everyone was silent for a while, and then some people were hysterical and furious and accused the Karen of being too flattering. This is forcing everyone to bleed money. What do you want to do? Do you want to be the butler of Archduke Karl? If you do this, won't it make everyone lose face? Some people fell into deep thought, wondering if they took too much. Although Transylvania can be called a large region, it is definitely not rich. Otherwise, such a good job would not fall into the hands of an outsider. I have to tell my family to take less when I go back, otherwise it will be difficult to report when Archduke Karl asks. In addition, the business represented by Randbell was in good condition, but the performance has been declining since I took over. In the past, Industries that could make a profit of hundreds of thousands of guilders a year now have a problem paying 100,000 guilders a year. Before he came to Vienna this time, he scraped together 300,000 guilders from everywhere. The Lagertz region under his control was a rich place in the Austrian Empire. Archduke Karl's real estate income was more than 300,000 yuan per year. But he was not well educated after all, and was persuaded by a gypsy to buy the so-called magic bean seeds. He thought he could produce 10,000 kilograms per mu and reach the peak of his life, but in the end he got nothing. Since the Rothschild family also set up a factory here, the steel plant's income also dropped a lot. In order to increase production, he hired a large number of workers, but manpower was ultimately not as good as machines. The result was that apart from increasing costs, nothing was gained. Many steel bars and castings did not meet the requirements, causing a lot of waste. Colonel Karen, what are you going to do? You have to give everyone a way out. If everyone is like you, how can we eat? Do you know that cutting off someone's wealth is like killing their parents? Winster threatened nakedly. He looked down on this bumpkin who was born into a military family. First of all, being a soldier in this era is a lowly job. In the past, the East said, good iron is not used to make nails, and good men do not become soldiers. This is also applicable in the West. Secondly, Karen is a Croatian. They are just a subsidiary race of the Hungarians, a group of bumpkins in the mountains. Count Marcus also echoed, Colonel Cullen, you are full and your family is not hungry. We all have families to support. You have to think about us. The managers of various regions also said one thing after another, hoping that Cullen would not make this matter bigger. For a group, anyone and anything that is different from itself will either be squeezed out or lured to join the group. This has led to a very strange phenomenon. A group of corrupt people are confidently teaching an honest person a lesson and trying to lead him into the right path. Usually, this situation involves interests, systems, and even traditional concepts. Anyone who does not fit in can only leave by himself. But Cullen no longer has a family. He is a soldier. His sense of honor does not allow him to go along with this group of people. 500,000 guilders is the profit of the Transi steel plant under my management. At the end of the year, I will also hand over all the profits of the real estate. If you have any difficulties, you should go to the Archduke to talk, instead of asking me to pay less money. Archduke Karl handed over the property to me, and I just handed over all the profits I made. I am fulfilling my responsibilities, and you should also do your part. Karen didn't want to go along with this group of people, but he didn't want to offend them too much. Karen just wanted to fulfill his duties to repay Archduke Karl for his kindness to him. However, his behavior has harmed the interests of this group. In the eyes of others, Karen's behavior is extremely selfish and shameless. He actually put his personal honor and gains and losses above the collective interests, which is simply shameless. Some people even excitedly pulled out their pistols and wanted to force him to surrender. But Karen's entourage was not idle, and they also pulled out their pistols. For a time, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Suddenly someone ran in and said, "It's the Archduke's carriage. The Archduke is here." Da, da, da. The sound of horse hooves came from the rain curtain, and the carriage was slowly passing through the rain curtain. "Uncle Albrecht, I didn't expect that your stewards could put together such a neat army." Franz looked at the neatly arranged entourage on both sides of the road. Although they were dressed differently, their postures were indeed the same. They all stood straight and watched the carriage slowly move forward. They were once Austrian soldiers, and my father was idle at home for many years. He just wrote books and trained soldiers when he had nothing to do. Even if they retired, their training was not delayed. If there is a war one day, they can go to the battlefield at any time, Albrecht answered casually. But with such a group of people, how do you plan to deal with them? What if they really get together and jump off the wall? Franz was very worried and even felt that he had made a bad move. He learned from the secret police that the stewards of Archduke Karl's family were all rich, but he didn't know that this group of people had a strong guard under them. If Franz had known that this situation would happen today, he would never have let Karimi take the Salzburg cavalry regiment to Nordsavie. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. What Franz never expected was that the date was randomly set. All the stewards arrived at the same time on the same day, and there was not even one late. Archduke Karl hated others being late the most, so his stewards would rush to the scheduled time regardless of everything. Because of someone's lateness, Archduke Karl lost a battle, and this battle caused Austria to lose the entire war. Although Archduke Karl did not mention this matter in front of others, he always felt resentful in his heart. It's okay, Franz. I've already made a backup plan. Remember the mountain where we rested? I've deployed 30 cannons on it and buried 500 kilograms of explosives under the main house. Albrecht seemed to be talking about something insignificant. Franz, do you have to be so cruel? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Greetings. Franz couldn't understand why someone buried explosives under his own house. Uncle Albrecht, where did you get the cannons? The City Defense Army's cannons are all antiques from the Napoleonic Wars. Why did you bring these here? No. They're all foreign-made 8 to 12-pound cannons and domestic-made 8 to 12-pound smooth-bore cannons. I bought them before because I wanted to see the difference between domestic and foreign products. I didn't expect that they would be useful today. It's great. If you want to use those antiques in the City Defense Army, you need the permission of the Army Department or the seal of the Emperor to mobilize them. Franz was silent for a while. They bought so many cannons and put them at home. This family is really generous. Uncle Albrecht, we are here to talk about money, not to fight. Franz, didn't you always tell me that if you can't get it on the battlefield, you can't get it at the negotiation table? To deal with these people, you have to have a hard fist and a ruthless heart. I have seen a lot of these self-righteous nobles in the City Defense Army. If you don't show them some color, they still think they are God. Albrecht turned the cylinder of the revolver in his hand and made a final inspection. Albrecht had 2 revolvers on his waist and a shining saber hanging on his waist, just like a cowboy in a Western movie. But he didn't smoke, because Vienna had regulations that did not allow smoking in public places. At the same time, he also felt that smoking would make people weak, which he could not tolerate. Franz held his forehead. Why do the 2 most capable fighters of this generation of Habsburg seem to have a tendency to violence? Okay. After all, they are your family. Let's think of other ways first. The carriage finally stopped, and immediately several old men in luxurious clothes ran to the carriage with umbrellas to greet them. It was just that the person who got off the car was not the Archduke Karl they had been waiting for, but the future heir of the family, Archduke Albrecht. But it made no difference to them. After all, they were all the bosses. Archduke Albrecht, you have worked hard on the way. Everyone is waiting for you at the door. Count Winster was the youngest of the stewards, but he was also much older than Albrecht. At this time, he tried his best to please the young man in front of him. Albrecht just nodded, which made Count Winster feel very embarrassed. He was also a ruthless character who could call the wind and rain in Bohemia, but he had to come to Vienna to suffer such a humiliation. A fierce look flashed in Winster's eyes, and then he forced a smile on his fat face and stepped aside. An old man in the crowd came over with a cane and was supported by someone. Little Albrecht, do you still recognize me? An old man, Uncle Ran, Bell. How are your legs? Thanks to you, although I can't ride a horse, I can still walk. Why didn't the Archduke come? Father caught a cold and couldn't attend today's meeting. Obviously, Ranbell's status in front of Albrecht is much higher than Winster. Winster glanced at Ranbell and thought to himself, the old guy is just taking advantage of his age and trying to scrape together 300,000. In this era of business opportunities, he can still lose money in business. He is really confused, but after Albrecht got off the car, he didn't enter the mansion immediately. Instead, he held up an umbrella. And everyone was a little confused. Did Archduke Karl not come? Then who else wanted Archduke Albrecht to wait on the side? A half-grown child jumped off the carriage, and behind the boy there was a young girl holding a cage. Thank you, Uncle Albrecht. When Franz was politely thanking him, Maya opened the cage. A large group of white pigeons swarmed out and flew around in the umbrellas. For a moment, the welcoming team was thrown to the ground. Someone shouted, "Protect the Grand Duke." A large group of guards swarmed in and tried to protect Grand Duke Albrecht. Bang! 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 Albrecht fired 3 shots into the air. That's enough, go in, the meeting will start soon. Franz glared at Maya with his eyes. What are you doing? Maya said very aggrievedly. Didn't you say that releasing some pigeons would make it look more imposing? Franz was speechless again. On the other side, in Serbia, a fat middle-aged man was hung in the air in the basement of a hotel. Eladonia, I didn't expect you to be so kind. Put me down quickly and let me take good care of you, the fat man shouted in the air. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Count Hawkins, I know you have a relationship with a big shot in St. Petersburg. Now I need the seal of that big shot, please help me, you little bitch, a slut that no one wants. What do you want to do? Don't you care about your family in Russia? Count Hawkins cursed. Count Hawkins, you always forget the information of your subordinates. I am an orphan. Yeladonia was not angry. Yeladonia clapped her hands, someone brought a pot of soup and put charcoal fire underneath, and the vent was opened. Count Hawkins was a little at a loss for a moment, as if he often confused the information of his subordinates. So when the traitor appeared in front of him, he thought he was trying to please him. Damn alcohol. Count Hawkins secretly vowed that if he could successfully escape this time, he must quit drinking. Count Hawkins, have you heard of a donkey being called alive? A pig-killing scream came from the basement. The typhoon passed today, and I can only type on my mobile phone. A little less, just make do. Chapter 56 Blackwater, 1. A group of white pigeons flew into the sky in the rain, flapping their wings like headless flies and flying around. Franz glanced at the poor pigeons in the sky, and then looked at the confused crowd in front of him. This appearance was a bit embarrassing, and he hoped it would be better later. Franz could only pray to God for no more trouble, otherwise he would start a massacre. Franz and Albrecht entered the main hall surrounded by a group of bigwigs. Several well-dressed waiters immediately stepped forward to take their coats and handed them hot towels and ginger tea. Albrecht and Franz only brought 2 guards, and a group of stewards and their trusted followers also entered the main hall. This spacious main hall now seemed very crowded. The waiters brought tables, chairs, fruit plates and snacks, but the stewards in the other direction were not so lucky. Although this manor was Albrecht's property, Albrecht almost never lived here. He liked living in the barracks because it made him feel closer to his goal. Most of the waiters were temporarily transferred from other places and were not familiar with the manor. As a result, many people could not even get a chair. Only some old people with higher status and smart people who had given tips could get seats. It was hard for the accompanying followers. They were supposed to meet the legendary figure of the boss, and it was considered to be an eye-opener. In the end, there was almost no place to stand, and they could not talk freely. I don't know which bastard released a group of pigeons just now, causing chaos. The masses who didn't know the truth were ready to protect the emperor. Maybe there were too many people and Archduke Albrecht was unhappy, so he actually opened fire. Now everyone dared not even breathe, for fear that they would say something wrong or do something wrong to offend the future boss. Albrecht didn't speak, and the people in the room had to hold their breath and wait for the young boss to lecture. But the young boss didn't speak, and it was the boy sitting next to Albrecht who spoke. Railway construction is now in full swing in countries around the world. The Northern Emperor Railway invested by the Rothschild family was open to traffic last year. The railway from the south to Trieste has also been acquired by the Sina family and is under construction. These capitalists are trying to control the lifeline of the Austrian Empire. We can't. Railway. Those damn Jews, despicable demons, we should drive all these freaks out. The prejudice of the old man Randbell has overcome his reason. My doctor friend assured me. When people sit in a train, their brains will be affected by the speed of the train, making men tend to self-harm and women fall into the abyss of debauchery. Trains are devilish weapons, and we must remove trains from Austria. Count Markish stood up and shouted loudly, as if the world would be destroyed if he didn't listen to him. Everyone also followed up with some solemn but irrelevant words. The Jews have gone crazy. When the trains are running, they will release Mars. Forests and crops will be burned. Cattle and sheep will flee everywhere. Flowers and grass will wither. Austria will become a desert like Africa. The British have done research long ago. Innocent passers-by saw a giant snake approaching him quickly and emitting black smoke. They screamed and went crazy. How can such a cruel thing exist in a beautiful and happy country like our Austria? We must destroy it and its Jewish master. Soon the room was full of anger, and some even compared Prime Minister Mettner, who persuaded the emperor to approve the construction of the railway, to the devil Satan in the Bible who tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. Traitorous Prime Minister, a running dog of the Jews. Down with Mettner. After some imagination, this group of people have already shouted the slogan of the storm year 8 years later. Seeing the situation about to get out of control, Albrecht felt ashamed and slammed the table hard. Shut up, The room was instantly quiet. Franz asked the waiters to bring a picture of the stock price trend of the Austrian Northern Emperor Railway Company. I don't know whether the Jews named Rothschild are crazy or not, but I know that the passengers who took the train are not crazy. And their stocks are going crazy now. The crowd fell silent as they looked at the stock price that had doubled several times. Money is a terrible thing that can make people lost and sink. But money is also a very intuitive thing. In this money-oriented society, as long as there is money to be made, who cares whether you are harming the world or not? In the eyes of the traditional nobles of this era, the income in the form of tasks other than the profits from land output is unreliable. And many family mottos also say this. But as long as the profit is tempting enough, let alone tradition, they are willing to trample on all the laws of the world, even at the risk of death. Looking at the greedy eyes in front of him, Franz smiled slightly. Now the Western Railway Company founded by Archduke Karl, Archduke John and the royal family is still raising a funding gap of 20 million guilders. Who wants to buy shares? Everyone was skeptical about the words of a child, and cast inquiring eyes at Archduke Albrecht. Me. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became lively. I want 1 million guilders. I want 2 million guilders. The most exaggerated one was the fat man with small eyes, Count Winster. I want to subscribe to 5 million guilders. Count Marcus also subscribed to 4 million guilders. Randbell also squeezed to the front to subscribe to 1 million guilders. De Karen also said that he would raise money to buy 1 million guilders of shares. In fact, the scene looked lively, but the class status was clear. Those small nobles and civilian capitalists had no right to compete with the heads of these regions. The several stewards who got the shares were naturally very happy. With the name of Archduke Karl as a guarantee, they were not afraid that someone would default. Those who didn't get the shares were obviously a little disappointed. After all, the opportunity to make money was right in front of them. But they found that they had never been qualified, and could only sigh at the injustice of the world. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. However, how could France let these people's money not be spent? Now Archduke Albrecht is preparing to jointly establish an arms company with the royal family. It is still in preparation. I wonder if you are interested. Everyone looked at Albrecht again, and Albrecht nodded. Arms are a very profitable industry. As the saying goes, when a cannon is fired, a lot of gold is earned. But why are arms dealers not everywhere? Arms are not something you can make just because you want to. The technical costs of early research and development and production lines are prohibitive for ordinary people. Many countries can't make them at all, so they can only buy them. But whether they sell to you or not depends on their own policies and international relations. Private arms dealers often don't have enough funds and can only make profits by imitating existing weapons. The biggest problem in the arms industry is that it doesn't mean that someone will buy your weapons just because they are good. You also need a strong relationship to sell your arms to the army. Otherwise, you can only sell them to mercenaries and civilian organizations who are in danger of losing their lives and will pay after the war. If you accidentally sell weapons to someone you shouldn't, you will most likely be sent to a military court and charged with treason. Archduke Karl's family is well connected in the Austrian military, so they obviously won't encounter this problem. Although Europe maintains superficial peace under the Vienna system, local wars continue. Outside of Europe, didn't Egypt and Turkey fight a war not long ago? I heard that French arms dealers made a lot of money. Now the Egyptian market is also open to Austria, and we can also sell weapons to the Egyptians. If the Egyptians don't buy, we can sell them to the Ottomans. Many of the managers present were military veterans. Although they retired, they still like to consider themselves as soldiers. Not long ago, Britain, France and Russia actually left Austria aside in the Turkish-Egyptian war. Isn't it because Austria's strength has declined that they dare to do this? If Austria can also have a strong army, which country dares to look down on it? The patriotic enthusiasm of these people, their desire for money, and their self-esteem as soldiers were ignited together. Soon, a number that satisfied France appeared, 50 million guilders. Chapter 57 Blackwater, 2. Soon someone realized that 50 million guilders was too much for an arms company. It was not enough to produce rifles, artillery and ammunition. Even if all the weapons of the current soldiers of the Austrian Empire were replaced, it would not cost 50 million guilders. Archduke Albrecht, how do you plan to use 50 million guilders? The person who asked was more tactful, perhaps because he was afraid of irritating the future boss. Albrecht looked at Franz. To be honest, He also thought that this group of people could be so rich. What kind of ghosts did he raise in his family? He couldn't help but start to resent his father. He didn't check the accounts for 20 years. What kind of things are these? You have to know that the annual fiscal revenue of the Austrian Empire at this time is only 120 million guilders. However, after deducting various necessary expenses and paying some debt interest, there are only a few million guilders left. 50 million guilders is too much for the arms industry. In the current Austrian military market, 20 million guilders is enough to become the market leader. Adding the possible surrounding markets, the amount required will definitely not exceed 30 million guilders. If all the 50 million guilders are invested in arms production, it may cause overcapacity, depreciation of goods and finally lose all the money. Without producing ships, the market for muskets, artillery and bullets is really limited. But counting military uniforms, military boots, medical supplies, barracks supplies, and military canned food, these 30 million guilders are still useful. Franz plans to open a Blackwater company, mercenary company, with the remaining 20 million guilders. The idea of selling war sounds good. Under the Vienna system, Europe is generally in a peaceful state, but local wars continue in the world. The next Sikh War, Afghanistan War, Haitian Independence War, US-Mexico War, Spanish Civil War, and Swiss Civil War will all be the stage for mercenaries. The most difficult thing for mercenary organizations is to find high-quality soldiers and high-quality customers. As for soldiers, there are a large number of ready-made veterans and military enthusiasts in front of us. As for customers, of course, they must be high-quality customers carefully selected by Franz. For example, Grand Duke Milos, who has been unhappy recently, must hope to use other people's hands to help him solve the problem of the 17-member council. Our company can not only produce and sell arms, but also produce military-related clothing, water bottles, medical equipment, mainly bandages and alcohol, etc., barrack supplies, temporary tents, etc., and of course we will open a canning factory. After all, food and grass are the most important thing in war. In addition, we will also set up a security company that sells security services. The company will provide training for the army, comprehensive and professional military advice, and all services to maintain peace and stability. Although Franz's words were more obscure, these people understood what he meant. Aren't they just mercenaries? Why are they so high-end? What about providing comprehensive and professional military advice? Isn't maintaining peace and stability just fighting? But these people are not annoying. After all, killing and robbing on the battlefield is their main business. Especially for those guards who are not doing well. It is better to kill on the battlefield than to be ordered around by these noble masters. These managers also have their own little thoughts. After all, under the instruction of Archduke Karl, they have taken in a considerable number of veterans. As long as these people can be organized and sent to the battlefield, it must be a considerable fortune. Moreover, these people have made money on the battlefield, and they have to spend it on their families. As long as his family is still working for him, the money will be his sooner or later. If he dies, it will be even better. What pension? As long as he doesn't tell me, who knows how much it is. The typhoon passed by recently, so it's a bit rushed. If I have nothing to do in the afternoon, I will update another chapter in the evening. Chapter 58 Blackwater 3. There is no weapon advertisement in the world that is more convincing than a unit that can always win battles. As long as the unit can win on the battlefield, its weapons, equipment, tactics and concepts will be respected by others. This is the privilege of the winner. But where is the war now? We have plenty of manpower, no need to recruit, they are all elite soldiers. The young men are full of blood, but I am afraid there will be no war. Randbell seemed very confident in his men. Please rest assured, we now have a big customer in Serbia, who needs 800 elites. We also have customers in the Central American Federation, and they need 5,000 people to defeat the Guatemalan pig farmer, referring to Carrera, the leader of the Guatemalan uprising. Everyone in the room swallowed their saliva. They could still gather 800 people, and Serbia was not far from Austria. Although they didn't know what happened. But it must have something to do with the disgraceful resignation of Archduke Milos and the strong rise of the 17-member parliament. And they have more or less heard some rumors, that is, there will be a war between Austria and Serbia. Although it sounds absurd, the boy in front of him said that a big client in Serbia wants 800 elite soldiers. Doesn't this prove the truth of this matter from the side? The remuneration of 800 mercenaries is at least 400,000 guilders, and this is the price that can end the war in 1 month. As long as the intensity of the war is high enough, it is not a dream to raise the price. As the saying goes, it is easy to invite gods but difficult to send them away is the truth. As for the price of 5,000 mercenaries, they are excited just thinking about it. Because they all know that the civil war has been going on for 3 years and there is no winner. And Carrera's army is aimed at all white people and churches. If they defeat the devil pig herder's army, they can not only get money rewards, but also gain a good reputation. Maybe they can take advantage of the opportunity and become colonists. After all, this kind of small American country is insolvent, and there are many who use land to pay off their debts. In this way, they may be able to leave their names in history. Carrera was originally an illiterate pig herder, who was instigated by others to lead villagers to attack the local government. The government army launched a counterattack and drove them into the forest, then burned their village. There are rumors that Carrera's wife was also killed in retaliation by the government army. Carrera vowed revenge and launched a guerrilla war with the Indians and Ladino people, targeting all white people, including the conservative priest who incited his uprising, who was also killed. A survivor described Carrera's army. Carrera's army is advancing, and at the head of the army is Monreal and a large group of other famous desperados, criminals, robbers and murderers. They blocked the streets with a large number of savages. They were armed with rusty muskets, old single-shot pistols, and bird guns. They brutally killed all living things they could see. Behind them were thousands of women carrying sacks on their backs. Whenever a house was breached, they would first brutally kill the owner of the house. Then the women would enter the house and take away everything that could be looted, including the victim's clothes and the body of their dog. But what about the American Monroe Doctrine? What if the Americans send warships to intercept us? Will our Navy be dispatched? An attendant who was obviously tempted stood up. Although money is good, you have to live to spend it. Franz smiled slightly. We are just a company that provides security, not representing the country. You are not Austrian soldiers in Central America. You are employees of Blackwater Security Consulting. We are just doing business. It's a bit perfunctory. Just take a look. There's really something going on recently. Chapter 59, The Business of a Cultist. The Central American Federation business was received thanks to the old charlatan Rauscher. A few months ago, a group of clergy from the Central American Federation went to the Vatican first, and after hitting a wall, they went to Vienna. These priests from Central America came to Vienna, just like Ranelio entering the Grand View Garden, for the first time. The blue stone pavement, the ancient and majestic buildings, and the music that existed like air all shook their hearts. When the roaring bell sounded, the whole city was filled with melodious bells. It was like returning to the war-torn era, when the Ottomans who threatened to destroy God's world and the defenders of this city were fighting fiercely in the city. In the end, the defenders of Vienna waited for the arrival of reinforcements, and the Ottoman Empire's ambitions were ended. The weapons left by the Ottomans were ordered by the Austrian Emperor at the time to be melted into a big bell to warn future generations not to forget the threat of the Ottomans. Today, hundreds of years later, the Ottomans have become the sick man of West Asia. The powerful country that threatened Europe in the past has become a weakling that is slaughtered by the great powers. Vienna, also a 1,000-year-old capital, is not as lifeless as Rome under the rule of the Pope. Instead, it gives people a sense of quiet and peace. The residents here truly love the royal family and the church. The city is full of sunshine and vitality, and people smile kindly at strangers. At night, every household closes the door early and enjoys dinner at home. In addition to the patrolling gendarmes on the street, only music echoes in it. The church is not only a place for worship and confession. During the day, a group of children will be sent by their parents to learn German, the Bible and some simple mathematics, and then picked up by their parents at night. Some sick believers will come to the church to ask the priests for help and treatment. These priests do not use the most popular bloodletting therapy at the moment. Instead, they use some strange grass roots and barks mixed with oil to make hot soup for the patients. Some priests will prick patients with strange steel needles and ask them to confess their sins. It is said that this will make them heal faster. As a result, there were often wailing and confession sounds in the ward. If you didn't know, you would think you were in the religious court in the Middle Ages. The Austrian Church's money-making methods also opened their eyes. It actually invested in the research and development of technology to collect patent fees and sell some strange powders. However, all this was thanks to far-sighted Archbishop Rauscher. These clergy from South America came to Europe to ask for help. The priests of the Papal States had little interest in the atrocities in Central America. They only cared about what gifts these Central American natives brought to the Pope. These poor people who had suffered from wars for years could not use the precious wealth to bribe these greedy priests. So they were coldly received in the Papal States, and they originally wanted to go to Paris first. But the priests who came to the Vatican to report on their duties told them that the current king of France was very weak. He no longer had the courage of the Napoleonic era, and recently he had a big fight with the British. If they go to the French now, they might have a bad relationship with the British. You have to know that the British are the maritime hegemons of this era, and any behavior that annoys them may lead to catastrophe. They decided to go to the family of the former lord first. After all, the entire Central America was once a colony of Spain, and it was the Habsburg family that ruled them in that most glorious era. The Spanish Habsburg family has died out, but there is still a bloodline of the Habsburg family in Austria. Maybe the Habsburg family is also obsessed with the territory of Central America and can lead them to glory again. It's a pity that they are wishful thinking. Prime Minister Met explicitly rejected their request to send troops. In Met's eyes, this group of people are simply a group of idiots who would consume their national strength for a piece of barren land with no boundaries. What's more, Austria's national strength is not enough to support an ocean war, coupled with the impact of the Monroe Doctrine. The Austrian Navy cannot guarantee whether the soldiers can be safely transported to the land of Central America. Even if the national strength allows, the land of Central America is not attractive to Austria. It can even be said that any land that does not border Austria is not attractive to Austria. They found Count Kolarov, Mettner's mortal enemy, and got the opportunity to meet the emperor. But when they met Emperor Ferdinand I, he clamored for dumplings. Chef Plinka said that it was out of season and there were no dumplings. But the emperor roared, "I want dumplings," and after several unsuccessful attempts, he actually convulsed on the spot. Their plan to save Central America through the emperor also failed. Just when they were desperate, they met Archbishop Rauscher. They first sent Rauscher a batch of Central American local specialties, gold and silver. Then they began to brag about Rauscher's merits and described Archbishop Rauscher as a savior saint. Rauscher himself was not bad, and could even be said to be a person of noble character. He just liked to be flattered and sometimes acted arrogantly. "No problem, Austria will save everyone. I will organize a fundraiser for you and help you through this difficult time." Rauscher patted his chest loudly, but the money collected was more than the gifts he received, so he had to bite the bullet and give the money to people who asked him to be Archbishop Rauscher. However, what made Archbishop Rauscher headache was that no one wanted to go to Central America to fight this war. He couldn't even find a lobbyist, facing the eager eyes of the church brothers from Central America. He couldn't do it himself and it was difficult to refuse. At this time, he thought of someone. The Prime Minister of the Austrian Empire is a timid person. Under his control, even if someone wants to speak for you, they have to consider his existence. After hearing this, it seemed that there was no hope. These clergymen from Central America hated the Austrian Prime Minister in their hearts. How could this person be so bad, not willing to help himself and not allowing others to help? May God punish this bad guy soon, amen. Rauscher changed the subject and said, "I know someone who can help you and is not afraid of Met's authority." Now, the visitors from Central America were in high spirits again. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Who is that? His Majesty the Emperor. We have met His Majesty the Emperor. I'm afraid, it's not His Majesty the Emperor, but one of my students. Archduke Franz Joseph. He may be young but he is definitely not an ordinary person. He could ride a horse at the age of 3, hunt at the age of 5, speak 8 languages at the age of 7, and discuss the classics of the Bible with me at the age of 10. So amazing, is it a saint who has come to the world? A stunned priest said casually. The priest next to him gave him an elbow and said, "It's no wonder that he is your student, Archbishop Rauscher. Only a great saint like you can teach such an outstanding person." Rauscher looked thoughtful and said, "To be honest, I don't have anything to give him now. More importantly, he is the future heir of this country, thanks to all the book friends who have recently rewarded and voted, as well as the book friends who have been reading my books and participating in the comments." The following is in no particular order: Jinyawityi 521, the knight who collects tithes from time to time, Kai Feng Kong Gaiao, Xiaodang 246, Happy Angel, Book friend 2020034141912443, Xiachuan Chunri, Swaying Thoughts, Drunken Wind and Clouds, Johnny Cheem Judiant, Listening to the Rain with a Wind, Han S., Ni Musk, Uii, Dio Who Is Too Excited, GW 3790, Lonely Waning Moon, Kuntu, Yuan Moxing, Devil Ziffin, Book friend 202106191545475250, Ancient Corpse in the Mountains, Book friend 201703021718444275, Lian Chuan. Xiang Yu fights Ran Min, sleeps during the day, Lewandowski, Book friend 201811251734356670, Book friend 201804172218155530, The Sacred Heart Will Last Forever, Fantasy Like Light Smoke. Chapter 60 Friends in South America. When a person is about to drown, he will hold on to a straw even if there is one around him. How could he let go of Franz, the big fish? So Rauscher brought a group of Central American priests to Schönbrunn Palace. When Franz learned that Rauscher had brought a group of priests to the palace to find him, his first reaction was that he had not fooled this old charlatan last time, and brought so many people to compete with me. Public kindergartens have already appeared in Prussia, but Austria's current national strength cannot afford such a social public undertaking. The original kindergarten was a kind of social welfare. In 1837, it was first founded by the German Froebel in Brandenburg. The Kingdom of Prussia gradually promoted it as a system that objectively solved the worries of workers and supported industrial development. France did not set up kindergartens to support industrial development. Now Austria's industrial production level is limited. Transportation capacity is also limited. If the output is suddenly increased, the transportation cost will also increase. And Austria has a more difficult problem, that is, language and education issues. In Austria at this time, you dare not go out without knowing 2 or 3 foreign languages. There are several settlements of different ethnic groups in almost every city. The literacy rate is so low that it is almost the best in Europe. Even Spain, which is constantly at war, cannot compare to it. Who can have a lower literacy rate than Austria? Of course, Austria's good brother, Tsarist Russia. There are several advantages to church kindergartens. The first is to save money, which is very important. The Austrian government is very poor, and the country's expenditures in all aspects are almost at their limit, and even the debt interest is selectively in arrears. But the Austrian church is very rich, so rich that it was once targeted by Austrian Emperor Joseph II. It is unknown how much it costs to buy or rent venues to build kindergartens and hire teachers all over the country, not to mention teachers who are proficient in multiple foreign languages. But there is no such problem if it is handed over to the church. There are churches everywhere in Austria. Local priests will definitely speak the local language, and German is the common language of the Austrian church. If you don't know German, you can't even receive the allowance issued by the church, so there are no parish priests who don't know German. As for teaching, many of these priests are of noble origin and have received a certain amount of education. But this is not what Franz cares about. Can we really expect preschoolers to learn any advanced knowledge? As long as they can speak German, it is enough. Some people are afraid that if children are exposed to Catholicism, what will happen if they become priests in the future? Sorry, children don't take this seriously. What? Do you want to hear a story? Yes, what? It's not good. I'm leaving. Don't bother me. If a person can be turned into a true believer by just a few years in kindergarten, the teacher must be the world's top educator or MLM master. Facing the aggressive Archbishop Rauscher and the priests behind him, Franz has already thought about how to make concessions. At most, he will give each priest who participates in German teaching a subsidy of 100 guilders per year. 100 guilders per year does not sound like a lot, but looking at the whole of Austria, it is an annual expenditure of millions of guilders. This is the biggest concession France can make now. After all, education is a long-term investment with slow results. The same amount of money invested in industry and transportation will have a higher return rate in the short term. If it is really impossible, then France will choose to cut off his tail and survive. After all, the Austrian Empire now has too many things to do, and it is impossible to invest too much in a business that will not see returns within 10 years. Franz took a deep breath and prepared for the next battle. Hello, respected Archduke Franz. I have some poor brothers from Central America who want to ask for your help." Archbishop Rauscher did not give Franz a chance to speak, and got straight to the point. Franz was relieved that they were not here to cause trouble. But what are these foreign priests here for? Central America? Mexico? A few years ago, Texas and Mexico seemed to have independent with the help of the United States. It has been several years, and even if Mexico is angry, it is useless. It is really the wrong person to ask the powers for help. In this era, only the British can deal with the Americans, but the south wind of the United States controls most of the raw material market for the British textile industry, and the cotton planting industry in Egypt and India has just started and cannot replace the position of the United States. Going to war with the United States, the British capitalists will not agree. The expectant eyes of these people in front of him made Franz feel uncomfortable to keep them at a distance. I don't know what kind of magic potion this old charlatan has fed to this group of people. Anyway, let's take it one step at a time. You guys tell me, I will do my best to help you as long as I can. Although I said so, a child's ability is limited. It's normal that I can't help you. We are representatives of the Central American federal government, and we also represent the Central American Church. We hope that Austria can lend a hand to our country and people. For this, we are willing to pay any price. All the land, property and population of Guatemala, which betrayed the Central American Federation, can be used as compensation. Our President Pablo Buitrago, the current highest administrative authority in Nicaragua, and President Morazan, former president of the Central American Federation, have signed this statement. Isn't this the legendary getting something for nothing? You want Austria to fight for you, and then use the land, population and property of a third party as compensation. This is a good idea. If the Austrians are too greedy and exploit too much, you can follow the locals to beat the Austrians. By then, we will not only recover the lost territory, but also win the hearts of the people, gain both fame and fortune, and truly blossom in two birds with one stone. Franz couldn't help but want to applaud. This is really a brilliant plan to kill two birds with one stone. But I can't stand it if it's on my head. The Central American Federation, this is the territory of the Americans. The future Panama Canal is the key to the rise of the United States. Through the Panama Canal, starting from the east coast of the United States, the voyage to the west coast of the United States is reduced by 6,146 miles. The voyage to the west coast of South America is reduced by 5,515 miles. And the voyage to Asia is reduced by 11,471 miles. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The shortened time and journey have brought huge commercial and military advantages to the Americans, making it possible for them to become the hegemon of the two oceans. In this era of sea power, the Panama Canal, which can connect the two oceans, has an unparalleled important role. A strong and unified Central American Federation is definitely not what the Americans want to see. The Central American Federation is too far away from Austria, and the profits that can be earned from ocean trade are really limited. However, there are still many things that can be sold to make money, such as arms, steam engines, perfumes and cosmetics. At the same time, Central America also has sugarcane, coffee, cotton and tobacco that Austria has always dreamed of. Although the Austrian Empire cannot personally participate, it can set up a Catholic volunteer corps or directly establish a Blackwater company. In the future, France will need a pair of black gloves. Chapter 61 The secret is revealed. As for the Central American Federation's use of third-party interests as bargaining chips, France expressed great disdain. But business still needs to be discussed. After all, there are not many opportunities to infiltrate Central America. The Austrian Empire has no way to directly intervene in the affairs of Central America. The same stereotyped answer inevitably made these people with hope feel a little uncomfortable. In the eyes of these people, there was only sadness and worry after their hopes were shattered. With the exception of one person, he did not lose his courage and fighting spirit at all. It seems that he should be the backbone of this group of people. The representatives of Central America did not speak, but the old man Rauscher could not sit still first. Archduke Franz, the people of Central America are suffering from war. War, famine, and plague are raging in that land. Civilized people are being slaughtered by barbarians, and God's people need help. You can't sit idly by. Rauscher made an impassioned speech. The representatives of Central America ignited the fire of hope again and looked at Franz. In fact, Franz was very happy to see this situation. After all, Franz still wanted to bring this group of people back to the negotiating table. The old man Rauscher was so active that I didn't know how much benefit he had received from the other party. Okay, respected Archbishop Rauscher. I can mediate for them. Mediate? What do you mean? Everyone was a little confused. I think I can find people and organizations willing to help you. Mercenaries? We don't have money. The representatives of Central America were not fools and reacted immediately. Mercenaries are not affordable for everyone. The cost is simply sky high and their loyalty is not guaranteed. If they take the money but don't do the job or take the money from the other party to do something to themselves, it would be a loss. This is easy. I can help you. As long as you sign an Austrian treaty of friendship and commerce with our country, open ports such as Corinto and Managua, allow Austria and Nicaragua to trade and give each other most favored nation treatment, and allow Austrian businessmen to invest and set up factories in Nicaragua, buy land and live there for a long time. As long as you send coffee, sugar cane, cotton, tobacco and other commodities to Austria, we can help sell them or directly invest in them. Franz wanted something very simple, just to exchange the blank check for real goods. Such trade will be very beneficial to Nicaragua for a period of time. After all, doing so is equivalent to finding a big buyer for Nicaragua, which can sell Nicaragua's crops and help increase fiscal revenue. The arrival of Austrian businessmen and capital will stimulate the growth of the local economy, and there is no need to worry about overcapacity for a period of time. It can be said that this is what the Nicaraguan government has been dreaming of. What they lack most now is money. As long as there is money, they can appease the restless people in the country, organize the army to buy weapons to suppress the rebellion, and reunify the Central American Federation. Farmers and landlords will automatically expand reproduction. Eventually, it will lead to overcapacity, commodity depreciation, and without a strong industry, Nicaragua's economy will be more dependent on Austria. Really? That's great. When will this treaty take effect? These Central American representatives seemed a little impatient, and Franz didn't understand. In fact, not long ago, both Britain and the United States rejected Nicaragua and the Central American Federation's loan requests. Even the Pope refused to support them and would not lend them a dime. Not to mention sending troops. I will ask my government to draft an agreement. You can take it back and submit it to your parliament for approval. Then it will be effective when it is sent to my country, Franz explained. We can make a decision now. Representatives of the two major parties and the Catholic Church in Nicaragua are here. I am Pablo Buitrago, the dark and thin man in front of him answered. Franz scratched his head. There really is such a warrior. The head of state traveled across the ocean to seek a way to save the nation. Okay, I will introduce Prince Metin to you. Negotiations are best left to experts. Let professionals do professional things. Do business with Austria now, and wait for the Austrians to defeat the rebels in Guatemala. Be patient for a few years, and sign a new treaty with Austria when the country is strong. If it doesn't work, just tear up the damn treaty. Anyway, it was signed by Nicaragua. What does it have to do with my Central American Federation? It's a pity that he is about to face Prince Metin, an old fox who has been focusing on diplomacy for 40 years and has killed countless opponents. There are rumors that Pablo went in with a smile, came out crying, and staggered as he walked, and hurriedly returned to the ferry bound for Nicaragua. But in Pablo's heart, it was all worth it, because he protected his country and prevented its division. Afterwards, Franz looked at the treaty signed by both parties and was quite shocked. For example, the change of tariffs must be implemented after the consensus of both parties, and the agricultural products shipped to Austria will be purchased by the Austrian Empire in batches according to the product grade. Austria will prepay 50% of the payment and the rest will be settled after the goods are sold. Since this warrior has already invested a lot of money, Franz should also help out. The establishment of Blackwater Company was also unanimously agreed by the shareholders, and they all expressed that they had connections and hoped that the company could recruit more of their own people. Count Winster said that he could provide a team of 1,000 people. This fat guy wants to eat alone again. This is the voice of everyone. The document agreement that had been prepared long ago was sent to the shareholders and signed and sealed. Well, now that we have finished discussing official business, it's time to discuss personal matters, Franz said with a smile. Kid, what can we talk about with you? Archduke Albrecht, I have prepared a special gift for you. I guarantee you will be satisfied. Count Winster walked up and said with a smile on his face. Albrecht did not speak, but just sat in a chair and wiped his pistol. An accountant handed Franz a list. "If I remember correctly, your name is Winston, right? Mr. Count." "Yes, you are the new attendant of Archduke Albrecht?" "A clever kid," Count Winston smiled. "Let's talk about you. The latest novels are first published on 69 Schuba." "Me? Well, you just invested 13 million guilders in the Archduke's business. The Archduke and I are very grateful for your support." Who dares to put himself on the same level as Archduke Albrecht? Everyone's heart began to beat, and coupled with Archduke Albrecht's previous performance, this child's origin may be very special. But you still need to donate 25 million guilders or deduct it from your profits. What? Are you kidding me? Count Winston is a big shot in Bohemia. Even the son of the governor cannot talk to him like this. 25 million guilders is definitely an astronomical figure in this era. Your father and grandfather have worked for the Grand Duke of Sicily for 60 years. Yes, my family has been working for the Grand Duke of Sicily since the time of Duke Albert. While working for the Grand Duke of Sicily, your family embezzled a total of 28 million guilders and evaded 3 million guilders in taxes by placing their property in the name of the Grand Duke of Sicily. In addition, after your family took charge of Bohemian affairs, the Grand Duke of Sicily's territory decreased by 70,000 acres of land, and lost 2 glass factories and a small ironworks. You are slandering. Winston instinctively grabbed Franz, but Franz did not move. Albrecht on the side suddenly jumped up, pressed Winston on the table and put a pistol to his temple. Don't. Grand Duke Albrecht, I am innocent. Don't listen to this kid's nonsense. Who falsely accused me? Was it Marcus? Or Jean Bell? They are all not clean. I am innocent. Winston continued to quibble. He looked at his men. You bastards, what are you still standing there for? Winston's men all looked away, pretending not to know the count. Franz walked up to Winston and said, What do you want them to do? Oh, by the way, I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Franz Joseph, Crown Prince of the Austrian Empire. You were trying to attack the royal family just now, right? No, I didn't. Winston hadn't finished speaking. A bullet pierced his head, and blood splattered everywhere. Albrecht's face was covered in blood, looking a little hideous. Who else wants to say? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Winston's Afterlife. The stewards felt somewhat guilty, but most of their attendants and guards didn't care. Because it was these masters who were corrupt, and they were just doing things for money. At worst, they could just change their employer. Isn't there a good new employer in front of them? Originally, these attendants and guards were nominally the servants of Archduke Karl, and there was nothing wrong with following Archduke Albrecht in the future. Archduke Franz was also there, and he was the future crown prince. If they really helped these stewards who were doomed, they would be really stupid. Looking at the reactions of Earl Winston's attendants, they knew that if they didn't clear their relationship at this time, would they be buried with him? Seeing that no one answered, the waiters in the manor took the list from the accountant behind them and handed it to the stewards present one by one. Some were hysterical, some were crazy, but more people breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the money didn't belong to them in the first place, but fortunately the amount of investment just now was large enough. If they were lucky, they could fill this amount with a profit from the return of investment in just a few years. As for wanting to defend himself, I'm afraid that the Crown Prince had already done a secret investigation. Damn, the secret police controlled by Med are really omnipresent. I must clean up a wave when I go back, and I will definitely let no one interfere. This is a matter of life and death. If anyone has any other ideas, Count Winston will be his fate. The loyal followers I brought with me looked like they wanted me to rebel on the spot, so that they could show themselves in front of their new master. The establishment of Blackwater directly turned my subordinates into employees of the company. I went from being a local lord to a manager, and I don't know who came up with this poisonous plan to cut off the source of funds. Things went on calmly afterwards, and no one stood up to resist. They all paid the money on the list given by Franz, and those who had no money signed an agreement promising to repay with future share earnings. As for Winston's death, it was necessary. His family not only embezzled the property of Archduke Merkel, but also evaded taxes. What was even more hateful was that they supported the anti-Austrian organization in Bohemia. Although they did not want independence, they just wanted to use these nationalists to seek benefits for themselves. But their money and their support objectively helped the separatist forces in Bohemia. Separating the country for personal profit is an intolerable crime. Moreover, Maya found a large amount of opium in the goods brought by Winster. At this time, smoking opium in Austria was sentenced to death. So many boxes of opium were enough to send his whole family to prison. Count Winster said that the gift he wanted to give to Albrecht was most likely opium. The purpose of Winster bringing so much opium was definitely not just to make Albrecht addicted to drugs. Maybe he wanted to use the power of Archduke Karl to open a drug house around Vienna. In addition, it is illegal to grow opium in Austria, and Bohemia is not a coastal area. Then these opiums are most likely grown privately by Winster, so his death has added another charge. After a brief interrogation of Winster's entourage, dozens of charges against the Winster family were obtained, including but not limited to human trafficking, forcing women into prostitution, forced buying and selling, bullying, assassination, kidnapping, poisoning. Judging from the results, it can only be said that he died for the right reason. I have something to do today, so I'm taking a rest. I'm not being hypocritical or asking for rewards. I really have something to do. Chapter 63, Winster's Afterlife, 2. The crimes of the Winster family were written down and made clear to all the stewards. However, the crimes of his family were too numerous, as if they had violated all the laws of the Austrian Empire. There were thousands of crimes, big and small, and Franz was shocked when he first saw them. Now that they were all announced, everyone present took a breath. I don't know whether they were indignant and surprised by the actions of the Winster family, or fortunately they had escaped. The one responsible for investigating the crimes of the Winster family was not the secret police under Metten, but the hometown association under Count Schussel. Mrs. Sophie was originally a princess of Bavaria, and the Count Schussel was personally appointed by the King of Bavaria. They were naturally familiar with the Bavarians, and the Bavarians who came to Austria were proud of them. Many people followed Count Schussel's lead, because everyone knew that he was working for Mrs. Sophie. So the so-called Bavarian Hometown Association was just a cover. In fact, it was Mrs. Sophie's intelligence organization and black gloves. Although Madame Sophie never mentioned it to Franz, Maya, who was sent out by Franz to wander around every day, could easily find out the news in this regard. Franz only needed to go to Sarah and Teffy to verify it, and he could come to a similar conclusion. When Franz found Count Schussel and asked him to help him, he was a little overwhelmed. What are you talking about, Archduke Franz? Our hometown association is just a non-governmental organization for Bavarians in Austria to communicate with each other, help each other, and keep in touch with each other. Oh. How come I heard it was a Bavarian gang? I think we should investigate the background of this hometown association and don't let our upright count be corrupted. I think it would be a good idea to let Lord Salmon go. Lord Salmon is the most notorious unit of the secret police, good at forcing confessions by torture and making random accusations. Your Highness, please be kind and let me go. Everything I did was instructed by your mother. If you don't believe me, you can go and ask your mother directly. I'm not asking you to go to war with the Winster family in Bohemia. I'm just asking you to collect some evidence of their crimes. Evidence of crimes? Archduke Franz, you should know that few big families have a clean hands. Especially for nouveau riche like the Winster family. If you want to collect evidence of crimes, just let the secret police go directly. Our people are really unprofessional, and many of them can't even read a word. Count Schussel spread his hands. The quality of his men was worrying, and the only advantage was that they could speak German. The secret police can't be used. They are good for dealing with poor students and small officials and businessmen. Their bureaucratic style is too serious. Even if they have first-hand information, they may not report it. It is very likely that they will use this evidence to threaten the Winster family for their own profit, and they may even help the Winster family to deal with us in return. The risk is too high. Franz said it lightly, but in Count Schussel's heart, there were storms. He finally solved a big puzzle in his heart. Why can't Austria, with such a large intelligence organization, always find the enemy so close at hand, and its efficiency is even worse than that of its own Bavarian gang? I will send the most capable person to go there right away. Looking at the back of Count Schussel leaving, Franz sighed and forced a woman to go to the hometown association to seek foreign aid. This country is really enough, it's time to change. Mrs. Sophie's approach is not wrong. In this era, politics cannot be done without black gloves. Back to the scene of the Winster family's crime display meeting. Winster's entourage was all dejected, like a bereaved mother. It was not for Winster's silence, but for a fear that Franz and Albrecht would deal with them as well. After all, they were also Winster's accomplices, and they all had the crime of knowing but not reporting. They were relieved until Franz made it clear that only the main culprit would be executed and the coercion would not be asked. Why is the loyalty of the people brought by Winster so low? It's very simple, because they are all outstanding talent selected from the army by Archduke Karl and Archduke Karl's old friends. For various reasons, these people had to leave the army and had no livelihood, so they voluntarily became servants of Archduke Karl's family. Although they were bound by the local stewards, in the final analysis, they were still loyal to Archduke Karl himself. These people were taken in by the stewards in various places at the instruction of Archduke Karl. So this time Archduke Karl summoned the local stewards to discuss matters and inevitably asked about these people. The local stewards thought that instead of boasting about it, it would be better to give them a decent set of clothes so that Archduke Karl could see in person how they had accomplished the tasks assigned by the Archduke. Moreover, these people were from the military and could act as bodyguards. After all, the stewards who came to Vienna this time brought a lot of property. In case of an emergency, no one can protect them. Property is a small matter, but it would be bad if they lost their lives or were kidnapped as hostages. The Blackwater Company established by Franz and Albrecht directly changed the identities of these people from the entourage of the local stewards to the company's employees. The object of loyalty changed from the local stewards to the Blackwater Company. Because they knew they would be sent to the battlefield, and these so-called stewards would not care about their lives at all. Their tasks on the battlefield were assigned by the company, and with two royal family members, Franz and Albrecht, present, it was clear what to choose. De Callen should be the happiest person on this trip to Vienna. I have long been fed up with the shitty style of other stewards. It is shameless to embezzle so righteously. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. But he couldn't betray his class, and he didn't want to be a dog without a home again. All he could do was not to go along with the crowd, but these things kept blocking his mind and making him unable to think clearly. Today is a good day. The royal family has come forward to sanction, which no one can resist. Anyway, I didn't embezzle, and I don't have to pay any interest. If he collected the information correctly, the list he received would include a check for £50,000 as a reward for his hard work over the years. But what made de Callen happiest was not this, but the expedition to Central America. He was once an excellent commander, but his unfortunate experience made him leave the army early. Over the years, he has never relaxed his requirements for a single day. He has been collecting war information in the world, hoping that one day it can be used to comfort his life ambition. He is not young anymore, and this may be his last chance to command a unit to fight. But he has his advantage. He is the only officer in charge. And Austria cannot send a genuine officer to command a battle, because that is tantamount to directly interfering in the affairs of Central America. It is even more impossible to let the generals of Central American countries command directly, because that is tantamount to suicide. As he expected, de Callen was appointed as the security advisor for Nicaragua. He will have 3 months to familiarize himself with and train his army. Chapter 64, Winster's Afterlife, 3. Winster's death was not the end. In Bohemia, the Winster family was still powerful, with thousands of gang members under their command. And the news of Winster's death would sooner or later be passed back to Bohemia. But times have changed. The railway from Vienna to Prague has been built, and thousands of Viennese soldiers arrived in Prague just one day later. These city defense troops may not be good at fighting, but they can still deal with some hooligans. When the Bohemian gang members heard that their boss's main house was surrounded, they immediately gathered people and horses with knives, sticks, and homemade firearms and rushed to the main house to cheer for the boss. But when they saw the neat army and the black muzzles of the guns, they didn't even have the courage to escape. Most of them raised their hands and surrendered, and a few who wanted to scatter became the souls under the knives of the cavalry. Now the Winster family has a new crime, organizing armed personnel to fight against the army. As for the police chief who served as the umbrella of the Winster family, he was arrested on the spot and sent to Vienna for trial. More than a dozen officials, both large and small, came to explain to the Winster family, but they were all detained by Franz and Albrecht. Since they wanted to be buried with the Winster family, they just fulfilled their wish. As for the guards of the main house, when they heard that it was the order of the royal family, they turned their guns and drove the Winster family out. The crimes of the Winster family were announced, the illegal gains were confiscated, the backbone of the family was liquidated, 17 people were hanged, 320 people were imprisoned, and the rest were limited to leave Prague within 3 days. The detained officials looked at each other at this time, and shouted that they were kept in the dark and did not know. However, the people around them who were oppressed and dared not be angry or speak out on weekdays, when they heard that the royal family took action to rectify the local evil forces, they jumped out to report and expose. These officials usually have dirty butts, and now they have also been involved. They were nailed to the pillar of shame. For ordinary people, this is a good thing that makes people happy. After all, the bully who is pressing on their heads has finally been eliminated. An old woman tells about her unfortunate experience. The old woman was originally the daughter of a local wealthy businessman. The wealthy businessman bought a barren mountain from a nobleman to build a villa. Not long after the purchase, a silver mine was discovered, which was originally a great thing. Unexpectedly, a catastrophe followed. The Winster family brought the nobleman who sold the barren mountain to the door and asked the wealthy businessman to return the mine at the original price. The wealthy businessman naturally would not agree, and was beaten to death on the spot. The Winster family robbed the mine and obtained government permission. When the daughter of the wealthy businessman collected her father's body, she looked for her father's teeth scattered on the ground. Every time she picked up one, her heart seemed to be stabbed by something. After burying her father, she and her mother came to Prague with the remaining property. There was no way to appeal everywhere, and finally learned from the bribed officials. Winster is a big man with a lot of hands and eyes. And even the governor has to give him face. He is also a supporter of the Czech independence movement. If Bohemia becomes independent one day, he will be a founding father, the George Washington of Bohemia. Her mother died of depression, and she married and had children in Bohemia. But she never forgot the hatred of killing her father and destroying her family. She had been collecting evidence of the Winster family's crimes and the confessions of the victims for so many years, and now she could finally take them out. The news that the Winster family was brought to justice spread immediately. The citizens ran around to tell each other, and some even cried with joy. When Franz and Albrecht left, the citizens of Bohemia sprinkled flowers and set off firecrackers to see off the team. Although the second-generation descendants of the city defense army were not very strong in combat, they were all of noble origin and were not panicked when they saw such a scene. These people were born with good qualities, and they were always fine in their daily lives. For a while, they were all proud, and their heads were held high, just like warriors who had just won a victory. The aristocratic temperament, chivalry, and military demeanor burst out of them at once. It's just that due to the lack of training on weekdays, they walked a little crooked. But in the eyes of the citizens of Bohemia, they did see an army that was different from the past. They are strong, brave, and noble. The second-generation descendants of the city defense army also discovered for the first time that they could not only eat and wait for death in the city defense army, but also catch up. It turns out that being a good person will be loved by others. Being a bad person will be despised by others. However, Albrecht, who was sitting in the carriage, could not be happy at all. He did not take Franz seriously when he told him the expected goals of this plan. After all, how much is the annual fiscal revenue of the Austrian Empire? Can this group of people in his family come up with 100 million? Impossible. When the results came out, Albrecht felt not shocked but angry. In the UK, where the world's military income is the highest in this era, an ordinary soldier can only receive a salary of 170 shields a year. In Austria, an ordinary soldier only earns 80 shields, and the income of ethnic minority soldiers will be even lower, some even less than 50 shields. And the money embezzled by his subordinates is enough to pay the Austrian army for 3 years. And after hearing about the actions of the Winster family, he became even more angry. In particular, when the citizens heard that the Winster family was arrested, they were filled with joy from the bottom of their hearts. Albrecht was so angry that he wanted to bring all the managers who had committed bad deeds to justice immediately. It can't be done now. We have to walk step by step and eat one meal at a time. If we take too big a step, it will hurt our crotch. This is politics, Franz comforted him. But there are still people at large, and we don't know how long they will be at large. This is a shame for our family. I should have fired a cannon to kill these bastards at that time, Albrecht said angrily. These people have formed an impenetrable wall with their complex network of relationships. These people once held the sky in their hands, but now we have opened a hole, haven't we? On the other hand, on Lake Prague, in a small boat, have you heard? Mr. Winster was shamelessly murdered by the royal family. What a pity. Mr. Winster is a great man who donated so much to a cause. Mr. Winster never despises us poor students and unemployed college students. He always donates to us and supports us in marching on the streets to fight for our rights. He always tells us when to stop and avoid government investigations. Yes, Mr. Winster is always helping us. My classmates were arrested by the secret police before, and it was Mr. Winster who rescued them. This time we can only fight alone. The young man who spoke was called Kasiko, the president of the Students' Union of Prague University. Damn Habsburgs, damn Austrian Empire, how shameless they are to murder a great man like this, and even spare his family. Mr. Winster was framed because he was too rich and refused to compromise with the Habsburgs. That Grand Duke of Siegen is not a good guy either. He is unwilling to say a few fair words. Mr. Winster, such a dedicated person, actually served him. It's really blind. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Let us pay tribute to the great pioneer. Hail the great pioneer. On the outskirts of Prague, several radical independence members received Winster's widow. Madam, please accept my condolences. Mr. Winster is a great man. His death illuminates the way forward for us. It is impossible to achieve peaceful independence. We must overthrow the rule of the Austrian Empire by force. The woman and the child kept crying. I heard that in order to gain independence, no matter it was America or Mexico, bloodshed everywhere. The man was still talking. Why are you talking about this? I don't understand, Mrs. Winster asked in confusion. Today, Czech independence starts from your family. The man shot Mrs. Winster in the chest, and the people around him also raised their guns and shot. Soon, bloodshed everywhere. Mr. Winster, please help us again. Let us win this war of independence to comfort your soul in heaven. Chapter 65, Winster's Afterlife, 4. Not long after Franz and Albrecht left, there were voices in Prague that whitewashed the Winster family. A large number of newspapers and celebrities stood up for the Winster family and missed this great man. For a time, Winster's name was elevated to the level of John Huss. Many newspapers, folk tabloids, publicly stated that Winster was the contemporary John Huss, and some even claimed to hang all outsiders, Germans and Jews. Just as the Czech independence faction was happy about its success, the name Huss completely angered the central government of the Austrian Empire. The Regency Committee unanimously passed the decision to suppress the new Hussites. Kolarov rarely agreed with his mortal enemy, Met, and even the two royal family members who had hardly spoken agreed. In fact, it was not the first time that the Czechs had demanded independence, but the scale was very small before. And most of them were just verbal, and the Austrian government tried to avoid conflict as much as possible. It was just at this time the Czech independence faction actually brought up Huss, which completely angered everyone in the center of national power. Count Ural, the Minister of War, personally led the expedition to Prague. The secret police handed over the newspapers and celebrity lists that whitewashed Winster to the army. The army arrested and searched them one by one. Because Winster had committed too many crimes and covered too wide a range of crimes. Therefore, all the celebrities who helped him stand up could be charged with his crimes and thrown into prison. Ordinary people had long hated this big bully, and the forced whitewashing by celebrities and newspapers could only have a counterproductive effect. Moreover, most ordinary people at that time did not read newspapers, let alone understand them. The Bohemian independence faction, who thought the time had come, launched an uprising. They declared that they would end Austrian rule and hang all foreigners. But in Prague at that time, there were more Germans than Czechs. What's more, there were even many Germans who had planned to participate in the uprising. When they heard that they were going to be hanged, they ran away quickly. As a result, the uprising gathered less than 200 people that year, and the plan of the uprising had long been revealed to the Austrian army. But they still decided to revolt and kidnap the university professor who opposed whitewashing Winster's family. The purpose of kidnapping this university professor is nothing but to sacrifice him. Kids, you are whitewashing a villain. Everyone in my hometown knows that the Winster family is a devil who eats people without spitting out bones. You are lying, old man. The good days of you Germans are over. An uprising leader stabbed the old man in the leg. His name is Tess Karl. He is the most promising college student representative of Winster and is hailed as a role model for Czechs. Oh my God, what have you done? The old man twisted his body in pain on the seat and took several breaths of cold air. I didn't lie. Winster's crimes are all true. And I am a Czech, not a German. You are talking nonsense. Count Winster is a good man who cannot be tolerated by this country. Whether we drink and make trouble, fail exams, or eat without paying, he can settle it for us. Isn't he a good man? Tess Karl's eyes were red with anger. Still want to lie to me? He slapped the old professor in the face. The beaten old professor spat out a mouthful of blood, mixed with a few broken teeth. He was just trying to bribe you. When we were in the gendarmerie cell, where were you? A bunch of university professors who only know how to talk big. Tess Karl punched him hard again. How could you be arrested by the gendarmerie and put in prison if you didn't break the law? Breaking the law. Who made this law? Tess Karl kicked the old professor over. The two younger brothers lifted up the chair that the old professor was tied to. Speak frankly, the old professor trembled and said, the government, bullshit, why should the German government control me? What you are doing now is illegal in any country. Cough cough, the old professor coughed up blood again, and it seemed that he was seriously injured. When I establish a country in the future, all these will be legal, then the country will be finished, and society will collapse. How do you know if you don't try? You German pig, you have no right to speak here. I'm Czech, you're lying, you're Czech, so how can you teach German? I speak German well, what should we do? Everyone looked at each other, and they actually caught a wrong person. They wanted to catch a German professor. At this time, Tess Karl overruled everyone and said, throw him out, a dead old man. Who knows if he is Czech or German? This unfortunate university professor was first kidnapped for no reason, then tortured, and finally thrown out of the window. A tortured old professor fell from the third floor to the ground, blood splattered. Count Ural, who was hesitating whether to attack, saw it. Originally, the process of arresting the new Hussites along the way was very smooth, and the citizens were very cooperative. The army should arrest people, and the citizens should live their lives. He was thinking whether the people in the Regency Council were too sensitive and should be treated leniently. The scene before him made him give up this idea. The latest novels are first published on 69 Schuba. This time, the Austrian army showed no mercy. After 2 hours of fighting, the uprising failed and the prisoners were collectively hanged. But there was an exception, Tess Karl. After being captured, Tess Karl took out a mental illness certificate issued by the Prague hospital. I am mentally ill, I have a doctor's certificate. The officer took a look and found that it was indeed a mental illness certificate. Go over there and send him to the mental hospital to be locked up, the officer said impatiently. Why doesn't he have to die? He's our leader. Yes, he's the leader of this uprising. Several prisoners who were about to be executed shouted loudly. What are you shouting about? What are you shouting about? You guys are joining an organization led by a mentally ill person. You deserve to die of stupidity. If you don't die, who will? The officer retorted angrily. The executioners around him, who were preparing to execute the execution with stern faces, all laughed. Finally realizing their own stupidity, the few people lowered their heads and walked towards the gallows. With an order, the lives of the unlucky ones ended. The officer pulled out the banknotes sandwiched in the mental illness certificate, which concealed his merits and fame. Chapter 66 The Crazy Hero. Kashiko and other major leaders did not participate directly, so they escaped punishment. This action successively closed down 15 newspapers, the circulation of each newspaper did not exceed 500 copies, and several newspapers were owned by the same owner. 170 people were sentenced to prison. Originally, they were just against the Austrian Empire. As long as they repented and wrote a confession, they could be released in 3 to 5 months. Even if they did not write, they might be released if they were locked up for 1 or 2 years during some celebration. But this time they happened to be related to Winster's case, which was a case decided by the royal family. It could not be overturned, and no one dared to overturn it, so these people were either sentenced to death or life imprisonment. Tess Karl ate well and slept well in the mental hospital, and people often came to visit this warrior who dedicated himself to the cause of Bohemian independence. Look, that's a warrior. He must have gone crazy because he couldn't stand the blow of failure. What a persistent person, may God bless him. Kashet, who was spared from punishment, was telling a few girls who admired him about the story of him and this warrior. After the girls left, Kashet shook the tears from the corners of his eyes. Kashet, you bastard. You are crazy. Why do you bring people to see me every day? You are busy picking up girls, why don't you bring some to me? There is no opium or women here, Teskar shouted angrily. What do you mean by picking up girls? I am contributing to the great independence of Bohemia. What do you know? They worship heroes, so I bring them to see heroes. Who made you so famous now? I am also making use of waste. Anyway, you can't go out now, and it won't kill you to let people see you. Forget about smoking opium. The government is strictly checking and burning all the opium fields. Oh my god, won't I go crazy in a few days? You can go crazy here for a few days. It's a good thing to quit smoking opium. Next time, I will bring you some girls. How long will I stay here? Teskar took a deep breath. When no one remembers you, you will be on the secret police's blacklist. Besides, what's wrong with you being here? Isn't our independence just to be free from the constraints of the law? Who dares to control you here? That's right. I'll remember to bring some delicious food next time, no problem. Occasionally, a few female nurses would come to see Teskar, which made him feel that the world was really crazy. In fact, Franz was very dissatisfied with the Austrian imperial government's overreaction this time. This matter was too rough, but this was a collective decision of the Regency Committee and no one could refute it. Winster's men who could go to the battlefield were sent to Blackwater Company for transformation. The hooligans who could not go to the battlefield were sent to the mines by Franz. What if these hooligans rebelled in the mines? Sorry, the mines of this era are not gentle places. The whips and rifles in the hands of the supervisors are not vegetarian. Once they enter the mines, they will be dispersed and split into new interest groups. Want to rebel? You also have to ask others if they agree. In the most developed Britain of this era, the average life expectancy of miners is only 3 years. Even if the labor intensity in Austria is not that high, it will not exceed 4 years. The inhuman labor intensity, coupled with the frequent accidents, makes it impossible to survive in such a place for a long time. Although Winster has fallen, if these ruffians are left behind, a new Winster may emerge. Sending them to the mines can be regarded as a waste utilization. After 2 successive attacks by France and the imperial government, there was a vacuum of underworld power in Prague for a while. At this time, a gang with a Bavarian accent quietly entered Prague. Nordsavy, Karimi has been having a headache recently. He is studying ways to conquer Belgrade. But the quality of his soldiers is really worrying. A battle 2 days ago was originally intended to boost morale. Use a regiment to deal with 60 armed cross-border smugglers. The so-called armed forces are nothing more than some earth rifles and machetes. But one of his battalions collapsed. Major, your men actually deserted in front of these smugglers. What else do you have to say? No. That's not true. What happened? It was the Italians you brought with you. They couldn't understand the German I spoke, nor the Croatian spoken by other commanders. They ran away first, and I just sent people to chase them. I followed them to supervise them in case they ran away with those damn Italians. Karimi was speechless. With such quality, what he should worry about now is not how long it will take to capture Belgrade, but whether Nordsavy can be defended. In order to ensure that the order can be carried out, Karimi made a series of reforms. For example, each squad must have a non-commissioned officer who can understand German, and only German is allowed to be used for battlefield communication. Then he took out a booklet 20 words you must know on the battlefield given to him by Archduke Karl a long time ago. This was written by Archduke Karl, who once told him that this booklet was the key to his victory. In the past, every Austrian officer had a copy, and everyone treated it as a treasure and organized his subordinates to study it. Karimi had also read it, but it was just some extremely simple words. He finished reading it at a glance, and really didn't know what it was for. Now when he took it out and read it again, it was simply a magical book. It was high-level and far-sighted. High. Really high. The latest novels were first published on the 69th book bar. In fact, the Austrian Empire had not been at war for many years, and later officers rarely organized soldiers to learn this book. In recent years, nationalism in Austria has risen, especially in Hungary, which opposed command in German. Only some veterans who had experienced the Napoleonic Wars would insist on letting soldiers learn these 20 words, because they knew that this would allow more soldiers to survive. With a war imminent, Karimi had to take time out to organize soldiers to learn this 20 words must be known on the battlefield. Karimi made drastic reforms, and some were happy and some were worried. Especially those officers who only speak Hungarian and Serbian, they have to learn with ordinary soldiers. And the requirements for them are much higher than ordinary soldiers. They must be able to understand and speak 30 phrases and 120 words. Otherwise, they will keep their military rank and salary, but they will act with ordinary soldiers. Lieutenant Taro was very happy. He was a Slovenian. He was still a corporal after serving in the army for decades. It was not that he did not dare to fight the enemy, but because he never had a war in his place. Soldiers of this era all wanted to fight because the military pay was really pitiful. But there was money for killing enemies and seizing spoils on the battlefield, and if they won a big victory, they could go to rob. Looting in wartime was a right of soldiers, and soldiers could keep most of the spoils. This reform was because he knew 4 languages: German, Hungarian, Italian, and Croatian. He was born in Slovenia, where people often spoke German and Italian instead of Slovenian. He was no exception, and later he learned Hungarian and Croatian when he served in the army. He had no bad record in the past and his military skills were decent, so he was promoted to second lieutenant. His salary was more than 3 times higher than before, and he was in charge of 30 people. Second Lieutenant Taro was very happy that he could be promoted without fighting. He also won a medal in the German language competition in the army not long ago. When he got home, he would let his son see how powerful his father was now. Chapter 67 Rolled Dragoons. Karimi looked at these soldiers who still needed to be retrained and couldn't be happy. Although they were brave and hard-working, and some of them had excellent individual qualities, such an army could barely defend the city. It was still a long way to go deep into the enemy's territory and carry out surgical precision strikes. There were 8,000 garrisons in Nordsavi, plus the 2,000 Italian soldiers he brought to defend Nordsavi. There was no problem waiting for the reinforcements from Hungary and Zagreb, Croatia. Even if Serbia could really mobilize 80,000 troops, Nordsavi would not be so easy to conquer. After all, the Serbian army had very few artillery pieces, and the country's artillery pieces might not be as many as the Nordsavi fortress. Most of the Serbian soldiers only had old-fashioned flintlock muskets, and some of them couldn't even get weapons. In addition, according to the calculations of Franz and the Army Military Academy, the Serbs could mobilize no more than 20,000 people in the short term. It would take at least a month to gather 80,000 troops from the country. And after Serbia gathered its troops, the checkpoints across the country were useless. At that time, only a fast-moving force will be needed to quickly break through the checkpoints and capture Belgrade to end the battle. However, these Nordsavi garrisons really give Karimi a headache. Although these people's military skills and weapons are much better than the South American army, but the discipline and execution ability are really not very good. When encircling and suppressing 60 armed smuggling thugs, a battalion of Italian soldiers actually deserted. Just after a round of volleys, the Croatian soldiers rushed up to fight with the others with bayonets, and they couldn't be stopped. The battle was won, but Karimi's nose was crooked. Especially the Italian major, who was full of nonsense. Karimi wanted to chop off his dog head with a knife. But this is not Brazil, and the general does not have that much power. But this is not a problem for Karimi. He just found a reason to send the Italian officer to the penance camp. Let him stand in a row with those soldiers who made mistakes and walk in front. As for the Croatian captain who led the charge and fought with bayonets, and then presented the loot to Karimi, Karimi promoted him by 1 level and appointed him as the captain of the war team, specifically responsible for the group of Italians who were prone to collapse. Karimi soon received a gift from Franz, a dragoon regiment with 1,500 horses and 1,200 people. The size of a normal cavalry regiment is about 500 people, plus the total number of personnel such as grooms responsible for logistics is usually no more than 600 people, and the number of horses is equal to the number of people. But in fact, because horses are expensive, the maintenance cost is not cheap. The Austrian Empire has not fought a war for many years, and it is already very good for a cavalry regiment to have 2/3 of its members have mounts. In some cavalry regiments, even less than half of the people have mounts. What's more, the cavalry regiments in some areas have no mounts at all, only mules and donkeys to pull supplies. Franz's dragoon regiment in Salzburg is obviously not among them. The number of war horses is more than the number of professional cavalry, and they are all real tall horses. All members of this dragoon regiment are equipped with the latest muzzle-loading rifle guns and Austrian imitation revolvers, as well as professional cavalry guns and cavalry swords. Lancers can only be in the first row, because if they are at the back, They will poke the horses' buttocks of the cavalry in front. However, due to long-term horse training, the bull legs of this dragoon regiment are very serious. After a few days of training, Karimi was relieved. These cavalrymen are professional knights on horseback, and they are excellent infantrymen after dismounting. It can be said that they perfectly interpret the dragoon. The shooting accuracy is also terrifyingly high, with an average hit rate of 70% for a 150-meter target. You should know that the average hit rate of the Nordsjælland garrison at a 50-meter target is less than 60%. This is not just a problem with smoothbore guns, but also the amount of training. These ordinary soldiers of the Austrian Empire can only be allocated 50 bullets for training every year. Even in Prussia, which attached the most importance to training during the same period, this number would not exceed 200 rounds. Russia is even more outrageous with 10 rounds, and some grey animals even fired their first shot on their lives on the battlefield. Although this regiment, like almost all the armies of the Austrian Empire, is a multi-ethnic mixed organization. But 90% of the people in this regiment are from noble families and can still speak German. Communication and command are not a problem, and they can definitely be regarded as the best of the best. Even among the officers in this regiment, there are several classmates of Karimi. Hey, isn't this an autistic lamb? His Royal Highness the Crown Prince asked us to protect you and obey your orders. Did you go to Ottoman to steal the red turban? Ottoman soldiers usually wear red turbans on their heads. You guys, look carefully. Karimi pointed to his rank. I am now a Lieutenant General, Commander Nordsjælland. Salute to you, my 1/5 Grand Duke. Several cavalry officers continued to tease. In their eyes, Karimi is a coward with weird behavior. Karimi was a little annoyed, and he remembered his unpleasant experience in school. Shut up. You guys shut up. Several officers saw Karimi's anger and stopped laughing. After all, the guy in front of him was his immediate superior, and he was not bad as a commander. Only Ed Muller didn't shut up, because he lived next to Karimi's house and had 10,000 acres of land. Every day, he watched the Karimi family working on the hundreds of acres of land. He found it funny. How could a noble do farm work? He was a royal family member. I felt ashamed for him. Ed Muller, I warn you, don't push me too far. What do you want? You want me to take the soldiers back? Where do you get the power? Well, you asked for it. You are now expelled from the army. Ed Muller was stunned at first, then he laughed so hard that tears almost came out. Grand Duke Karimi, I haven't seen you for a long time. How come you have become so humorous? I am a cavalry major, but I inherited it from my father. My father's major was given by the late emperor. If you want to expel me from the army, you have to ask His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The latest novels are first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. Karimi took out a dismissal order with the name of Ed Muller written on it. Look carefully. There are seals of Archduke Franz and the Imperial Army Department on it. Get him out of my barracks now, Karimi shouted loudly. In this era, all Austrian nobles had to serve in the military, just like Franz, who had been serving in the military since his mother's womb. Nobles did not have to go to the battlefield to serve in the military, which was completely fine. But if someone was expelled from the army, he would definitely become a joke in the entire aristocratic circle. Not to mention hereditary military nobles like Ed Muller, this would not only make him a laughingstock, but also ruin his future in the military of the Austrian Empire. I protest, Ed Muller knew to restrain himself this time, but it was too late. His protest was in vain. A group of Croatian soldiers who did not understand German very well threw this guy who made the boss unhappy out of the barracks. Before throwing Ed Muller out of the barracks, they did not forget to use their glorious tradition to pull off his military uniform and boots. This group of Croatian soldiers didn't care about Count Muller's face at all. In their eyes, the boss was a member of the royal family and the boss of this military camp. The boss knew everything, and it was definitely right to listen to the boss. Although the other officers sympathized with Ed Muller, they didn't want to provoke this lunatic again. After all, even if he could accept being expelled from the army, his family couldn't accept it. What's more, he had a bright future, so why should he go against this lunatic at this critical juncture? As long as the future crown prince ascends the throne, the guards will be formed based on this Royal Dragoon Regiment. He is very likely to be the general of the guards cavalry. Let's see how long this Karimi will be arrogant. But what they don't know is that Karimi's boss behind the scenes is their crown prince. Chapter 68 Dance 1. Angus, a character in the Companion 2, finally got rid of those damn potatoes. Arriving in England, He finally got the £20,000 that his parents mailed to him. Thank God, they haven't forgotten me, Angus said to himself. Angus repaid the debts during this period and bought himself a new outfit. This time he could finally take the first-class cabin to Venice. Standing at the bow and looking at the rough sea, he couldn't help but open his arms with a heroic spirit. I come, I see, I conquer. Such behavior is obviously unconventional, but the first-class passengers are still very well-mannered. Several people who were disturbed just raised their glasses to signal him. A middle-aged man in his 30s walked towards him and handed him a glass of wine. My friend, you are so bold. I just don't know whether you want to conquer Italy or Austria. Of course it's Austria. Italy is just a geographical term, Angus answered casually. At this time, Italy was distributed with several countries belonging to different spheres of influence. No one would regard them as a whole, except for Napoleon's elements. Seeing that the visitor was somewhat unhappy, Angus reacted immediately. The man in front of him should be a Napoleon follower, so he naturally thought that the other party should be a Frenchman. At the same time, there was a hint of poverty in the temperament of the man in front of him, and he should be illiterate. Angus understood the principle of catering to the other party's preferences, and began to praise Paris, the capital of France. On the one hand, he could win the other party's favor, and on the other hand, he could show off his talents. The main reason was that Paris was too famous and too glorious in the 19th century. My friend said that if a person has been to Paris, then he will no longer be interested in heaven, Angus said. The middle-aged man opposite just looked at Angus's appearance and temperament, and felt that he was definitely not an ordinary person and wanted to meet him. To see if it could help his career. Now that the other party has made the first move, he has to accept it. But why should he praise Paris when he is obviously going to Venice? Fortunately, he has also been to Paris. From ancient times to the present, young people from all over the world have gathered in Paris with various dreams and ambitions. Here they have realized their dreams and also experienced disappointment. The city of Paris is indeed worthy of the name of the heart of the world. The two of them talked back and forth, but they could not find each other's weakness. They had to show their cards to each other. My name is Mazzini, editor-in-chief of the Apostolic People. My name is Angus, an American financier. What are you going to Venice for? Literally, I'm going to conquer this country. Which country? Austria. What are you going to Venice for? I'm going to conquer this country too, but for Italy. Both of them have been in London. Their common experiences and disappointment with the world's first empire, the British Empire, brought them closer to each other. After getting drunk, Angus promised to find a considerable loan for Mazzini. Mazzini also said that if the expedition was successful, he would hire Angus as Italy's financial advisor. After that, Angus came to Vienna. Standing in front of a tall and magnificent building. This country will go crazy for me. Let's start by conquering this ball. Angus, wearing a trench coat, a top hat, and a gold-rimmed monocle, shook his umbrella and walked towards the door arrogantly. You can't go in like this. Please show me your invitation. The servant at the door extended his hand politely. Here is the invitation. I can go now, sir. Angus took off his politeness and threw the invitation to the servant. He thought he had made a very handsome move, but in this ancient country, such a frivolous move was considered impolite. Fortunately, the servant was also a nobleman and had better self-restraint. Sir, please stay. You can't bring your umbrella in. Angus had to hand over his umbrella, but when the other party took the umbrella, he suddenly grabbed the umbrella and refused to let go. When the other party was confused, he did not forget to add some threatening words. If you insist, you can. But I want to tell you that I have attended countless real balls in the UK and the US that were much larger than your second-rate balls. I didn't even have to hand over my umbrella, you know? I really sympathize with you. Faced with this meaningless threat, the attendant felt helpless inside in his heart. The quality of balls nowadays is really getting worse every year. How can anyone be invited? The latest novels will be first published on the 69th book bar. What he didn't know was that Angus spent £200 for this invitation. Angus' heart was bleeding. He had never spent so much money on an invitation. This was a charity ball initiated by the Vienna Catholic Church and the royal family to raise funds for the Danube flood-stricken areas. Many celebrities will attend, and Franz, who just got his own guard, will also attend. The Danube flood is strange. The Danube flows through the mountains of Bavaria, but there is almost no problem. But once it enters Austria, it will turn into a natural disaster and wreak havoc. The main reason is that there are many tributaries in Austria, and the water volume has increased dramatically. At present, the flood control situation of the Turin Dam is very tense. Even in Vienna, this group of heartless nobles felt a crisis. They actually wanted to hold a ball, although the purpose was to donate money to the Turin Dam and the disaster area. But in this crisis situation, they still held a ball here. It really has the meaning of a merchant's woman does not know the hatred of the country's destruction, and still sings the back garden flower across the river. Franz only brought Ruskna this time because Sarah and Maya's identities were too sensitive. A Jew and a Gypsy are not only in Austria, but also in Europe. Ruskna is tall, fair-skinned, and blonde. You can tell from a distance that she is a German, which can save a lot of trouble. Moreover, Ruskna's temperament and appearance are also excellent choices, which can avoid some unnecessary things from happening. At the very least, it can make them have some self-knowledge. But Franz soon regretted it. The sentence Franz heard the most that night was, "Beautiful lady, can I ask you to dance the first dance?" Then the other party took her hand back in Ruskna's disapproving eyes. He ran back to the circle of his family in shame. Then he was severely beaten by the elders, pointing in the direction of Franz and teaching him something. Ruskna actually didn't like this kind of occasion very much, and was afraid of meeting old friends. But this feeling of keeping people at a distance unexpectedly made people feel aloof. Franz has no talent for dancing, and he doesn't like it. He just looks for delicious food based on his own interests. Archbishop Rauscher, who was in high spirits, was delivering his Versailles speech. It is our duty to restore the glory of God. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Dance 2. Archbishop Rauscher raised his glass to greet Franz, and Franz also raised his juice to Archbishop Rauscher in return. Archbishop Rauscher can be said to be in high spirits. With the support of the royal family and the church, the achievements of the Royal Academy of Sciences in Vienna have experienced explosive growth. Although most of them are useless or have no benefits in the short term, the achievements of innovation in this era are huge. For example, someone invented pasteurization based on Franz's bacteriology. Of course, the person who discovered this method in this time and space is not called Pasteur, so this sterilization method is not called pasteurization. The church bought the naming rights of this sterilization method, and Archbishop Rauscher personally named it the Glory of God on behalf of the Austrian Catholic Church. Although it was Franz who founded the Blackwater Company, it was nominally a volunteer Catholic brotherhood. Of course, this hat was also put on Rauscher's head. Rauscher did recruit some warriors in Austria who volunteered to go to Central America to maintain peace and protect Christians. Archbishop Rauscher's personality is more like to show off, and while showing off, he did not forget to bring Franz a few words. But for Franz, such compliments were completely worthless. He hoped that the ball would end quickly. After all, Franz was just a draftee. Archduke Franz Karl, Franz's chief father, who was supposed to attend the ball, was drunk and sleeping at home, so Franz had to take the blame. Rauscher's unintentional behavior completely exposed Franz. Although Franz was still young, several socialites came with their skirts and folding fans to try their luck. Of course, the result was that they could only run away in disapproval from Franz and Ruskina. For such an upper-class ball, dancing is secondary, and its real value is to give men and women the opportunity to know each other. Although it is a charity ball, it is also an opportunity for various forces to test and find each other. Lecherous people pursue women, businessmen pursue money, and politicians pursue power. Everyone enjoys themselves, but there are exceptions. Some men and women talked happily, and they ran up to the second floor hand in hand. Of course, it is impossible not to be jealous in such an occasion. Angus has a feminine beauty and claims to be a financial capitalist from the United States. Soon, a circle of beautiful women gathered around Angus who did not know the truth. This is not a problem. Some people like to cheat, and some people like to be cheated. It is consensual. But Simon de Taffy, the host, was obviously very unhappy. He is a traditional aristocrat, and what he hates most is this kind of tasteless capitalist and pretty boy. Angus boasted about his investment vision. The stock market is my ATM. Do you know? When I first arrived in London, I only had £3 and 5 pence in my hand, and only 2 weeks later, I left London with £20,000, the women exclaimed. You are really amazing. Now that I am here, I promise that as long as you invest in me, you can get a 50% return within half a year. The financial industry in continental Europe is really too backward, and there is really no challenge compared to New York and London. Angus's boasting became more and more outrageous, and the men were very annoyed but did not know how to refute. Most women of this era were not educated and were easily attracted. Franz thought this was a talent. Isn't this a typical Ponzi scheme? But he actually scammed me at my doorstep. I'll find a chance to drive this scammer back to the United States. Ponzi schemes still have a market today, and Franz can't let such people stay in Austria. Simon Teffy is Edward Teffy's cousin. He is a representative of the old aristocracy who is arrogant and ambitious but lacks talent. Simon walked towards Angus, and the women around Angus were all exclaiming, "Does Count Simon also know Mr. Angus?" Simon snorted coldly, "How can I know such a person? He is not worthy. You'd better be careful, this guy is just a gigolo, specializing in cheating money and sex. Boy, you better be careful, I will definitely expose your true face." It is obvious that Simon did not discover the Ponzi scheme, he just simply didn't like this gigolo. This scared Angus, and the beauties around him immediately noticed Angus's expression. Mr. Angus, are you okay? You look so bad." Simon was not willing to let Angus go. "Who are you? Who invited you? Why haven't I heard of you?" Angus did not panic and asked back, "This kind of ball. Can't I, Angus, come? In the United States and the United Kingdom, any ball would be proud to invite me. Since it is a charity ball, you only need a charitable heart, and there is no need for an invitation. Am I right?" Beauties. Angus' words made Simon furious. Angus glanced at Simon again. "I would like to ask you, how did an ugly and rude fat guy like you get in? Is the host of this ball blind? I think you don't know whose territory this is," Simon said in a bad tone. "I advise you not to ask for trouble," Angus said frivolously but confidently. "Okay. Although I don't know how a pretty boy like you could get into this ball, I will let you know that you are not worthy of this level of ball." Simon deliberately raised his voice, and the two of them instantly became the focus of the ball. Simon came to the piano and asked, "Can you play such an elegant instrument as the piano?" Angus sneered, "I can play this thing when I was 3 years old. The latest novels are first released on the 69th book bar. It is not uncommon for nobles to play the piano in this era." Simon has no special skills, but he plays the piano well. He has been practicing piano since he was a child, and his teacher even thinks that he has the potential to be a court musician. It is impossible for Simon to be a court musician, but playing the piano has been his hobby for more than 20 years and has never been interrupted, so he has absolute confidence in himself. Simon sat down at the piano and began to play. The 20 years of practice have not been in vain, and the song he chose is Wagner's and is full of momentum. Franz was just an amateur, but he could feel the majestic momentum of this piece of music, which sounded better than the one played by the professional musicians just now. Ruskna nodded. Count Simon's performance was indeed wonderful, and the piece he chose was also very good and full of momentum, but he lacks some talent. After the piece, Simon stood up, bowed and thanked the audience. The audience naturally responded with warm applause. On the one hand, Simon played well, and on the other hand, the face of the Teffy family had to be given. Simon made a gesture of invitation, and Angus strode towards the piano, lifted his hem and slid his 10 fingers gently on the piano. "You asked for it." From the first note, everyone knew that Simon had lost. "It's Beethoven's piece," Ruskna said. "If it comes to momentum, no one can compare to this music saint who wants to strangle the throat of fate." The piece was well chosen, and the level was also above Simon. Simon's loss was not unfair, but the attitude of the winner made Franz want to beat him up. Chapter 70 Ode to Joy. After the song, Simon was reluctant to admit it, but he did lose. As a noble, his self-esteem required him to be magnanimous, and he had to salute the winner. Simon tried to keep smiling in front of this young man who embarrassed him. Simon stretched out his hand. "It's your victory, I'm fighting for mine," but Angus didn't care about Simon's outstretched hand. Instead, he stood up, took out a match, struck Simon's super expensive piano, and lit a cigar. He took a deep breath and blew the smoke ring at Simon. "Before I came to Vienna, I heard that there were many masters here. Today, I see that it's just like that. Angus knew in his heart that the fat man in front of him had to practice all day long to reach this level. If he had to rank the fat man in front of him, it would be a level 3. Angus looked at the surprised expressions of the people in front of him, and some even took out their little notebooks to write something down. That must be a reporter, Angus thought so proudly. However, what he didn't know was that people were not surprised by his level and his sarcastic words. What surprised everyone was that this man dared to smoke in public in Vienna. Vienna has banned smoking in public places since 1837, as mentioned before. What was even more terrifying was that there were members of the royal family present, and the person who took out a small notebook and took notes was not a reporter, but a secret policeman. This kind of person who openly challenged the dignity of the law and the authority of the royal family should be able to make a lot of money. The guests, including Count Simond, were praying silently, hoping that the young man could leave Vienna with all his limbs intact. On the contrary, not many people took those sarcastic words to heart. Vienna, an ancient city, is unusually tolerant of young people. Because there are many geniuses in Vienna, and sometimes geniuses are no different from lunatics. No matter how frivolous the words are, these people are used to them. There is only one exception, that is Franz. Now, he has been completely angered by the American in front of him. Does this American really think that no one can deal with him? He needs to be taught a lesson, Franz thought to himself, tapping his fingers on the table. Franz looked at Ruskna, who nodded in confusion. Ruskna suddenly smiled. In her eyes, this young master was just like an old man all day long. Franz didn't seem to care about anything, rarely showed his feelings, and often said some inexplicable words. He didn't care if he was bullied by the maids occasionally. He occasionally bullied Kasia and Maya just because they did something wrong and needed to let them know that they were wrong. Franz gave him a separate residence and didn't have to live with others, which showed him great respect. It was really funny that he was fighting with a reckless foreigner today. In Ruskna's eyes, Angus was a little capable, but it was not uncommon for such people to be everywhere in Vienna. After all, Ruskna was a student of Liszt, and there were not many people who could catch her eye. Just as Ruskna was about to appear on the stage to solve this little thing for Franz, Franz found a new target, a waiter who looked like a middle school student. It looks like he is a child of an aristocratic family, who has come out to work and study. The middle school student stared at the piano without stopping, and his fingers played in vain. Although Franz didn't know what he was playing, his hands were very fast, his fingers were slender, and he had a strong sense of rhythm. He must be a powerful character. As the world's music capital, it is not uncommon for Vienna to occasionally have a few young geniuses. Franz walked behind the waiter and said, "Do you want to try it?" The waiter looked at Franz with some doubts, then looked at Ruthna beside Franz and swallowed a saliva. It was obvious that the waiter was a little nervous, but I don't know if it was because he knew Franz's identity, or it was just a physiological reaction to seeing a beautiful woman. He nodded. "Are you sure?" Franz asked. The waiter nodded again. Franz was a little helpless. This man is not a mute. "What's your name?" "Johann Strauss." Franz leaned back and said, "Okay, I'm invincible." "Go ahead." Franz pushed Johann Strauss when he was confused. He wants to try it too. "Do you dare to accept the challenge?" Angus soon found the flustered waiter in front of him. He couldn't help but laugh. "Do you want to set me off? Is there really no one in Vienna? Let this doorman compete with me." In fact, there were several famous musicians in the hall, but they had to give up when they saw that the person who pushed the boy up was Franz. But he had made up his mind to cheer for this boy, no matter what shit he played. After all, this is politically correct. The happiest person at this time was Simond. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince wanted to stand up for him. It was really face-saving. It seemed that his cousin Edward Teffy had a very good relationship with the Crown Prince, so he had to go to Beijing. Maybe he could even get a position and bring honor to his family. Angus looked at the silent crowd and spread his hands. "Okay, I accept the challenge." The boy sat down in front of the piano tremblingly. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. "How boring," Angus added. The boy's fingers seemed to press the keys randomly a few times, and the sound produced was not a tune. Franz looked at Ruskna, who frowned. He is testing the sound. He seems to have not touched the piano for a long time. Isn't he from a musical family? Franz, are you saying that he is the eldest son of the Napoleon of the music world? Ruskna was a little unbelievable. Of course he is, but how could he have hardly touched the piano? I heard that the relationship between father and son is very bad. Old Johann Strauss does not allow his son to touch musical instruments, Ruskner replied. In fact, after Johann Strauss Jr. composed his first piano piece at the age of 5, he hardly touched the piano. Franz was a little desperate. Did he just want to touch the piano instead of going on stage and touching people? My God, what have I done? The music sounded, it was Beethoven's Ode to Joy. It was actually a practice song. Kid, do you look down on me? Angus could tell that the child in front of him was not practicing and his hands were very unfamiliar. But some geniuses cannot be inferred by common sense. After a few seconds, the unfamiliar music evolved, and everyone was in a gorgeous and bright church. Endless light illuminated everything, just like the merciful eyes of the Virgin Mary sprinkled on the world. Endless joy cleansed people's hearts. Franz could not feel these, he only knew that his scalp was tingling. Chapter 71 Shock. Johann Strauss Jr.'s song Ode to Joy dispersed the hostility of the previous duel, and the quiet and peaceful atmosphere returned to the dance. Compared with the arrogant Angus, the guests were more curious about who this young man was. Such a young genius should not be unknown. Franz finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this famous musician had enough talent. Otherwise, if he was beaten and affected his future mood, wouldn't he become a sinner? Angus was also a little surprised that he could play such a beautiful song with such unfamiliar techniques. Angus was beating his head. Does this waiter in front of me have the same talent as me? Impossible. Anyway, pretending to be cool is my strong point. No, it's a show of skill. Angus walked back to the piano and looked around. It's time to show my real skills. He took out a black scarf from his pocket and covered his glasses. This was something he had practiced before. As a person who often competes with others in music, he has a lot of experience. There are many ways to play, such as this blindfolded playing method, which has a great impact on people who have not practiced before. After all, no one would practice piano with their eyes covered. The music sounded again, and this time Angus also changed to a simple and beautiful song. After all, with your eyes covered, you must play something you are good at. But soon he heard the sound of the piano on the other side, and it was the same song he played. Everyone began to applaud. After all, there is no better audience in the world than the leisurely Viennese. Everyone regarded this duel as a performance and enjoyed it very much. But Angus obviously didn't want to end with an average, so he immediately changed to Chopin's A minor etude. Although this song is called an etude, its difficulty is far beyond that of an ordinary sonata. But Angus still didn't get the effect he wanted, and the other party's strong sense of music was far beyond his understanding. So much so that he thought the other party was cheating, and Angus pulled down the blindfold angrily. It turned out that the other party was covered with a white towel used to hold the kettle. The music stopped, and the atmosphere in the venue became heated. The guests applauded the two for their wonderful performances, and praised them generously. But this was not what Angus wanted. He only wanted victory. I have already won. Angus had to resort to the last resort. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. Everyone who understands music knows that I have already won. Since ancient times, there has been no first in literature and no second in martial arts. It is very difficult to forcefully judge which of the two musicians is stronger or weaker. Angus's rogue victory declaration made everyone present feel helpless, but even the music masters did not say that Angus was completely wrong. Have some self-knowledge, American, Simon protested. In fact, he wanted to scold Americans, but there were too many big names present. If he just wanted to have a good time, he would probably leave a bad impression on people. This would be a loss for him. Angus just repeated, it doesn't matter if you don't admit it. People of your level are not qualified to comment on my music. In fact, in the hearts of these music masters, Angus had already lost, not in technique. Instead, they lost in their mentality. No matter how beautiful the music played by those who only want to win and have an arrogant attitude is, it will not have a sense of peace. Play another song, and let the last song decide the winner, Franz said. Angus took a look and saw that he was a little kid and didn't care too much. I don't care what it is. It's so late, you don't want to listen to a lullaby, do you? If so, you should go home and ask your mother to play it. This time, Angus' words made everyone feel not surprised, but frightened. There are still people in Vienna who dare to tease Madame Sophie. Although the Crown Prince has a good temper, who can guarantee that these words will not reach Madame Sophie's ears? This person is dead. Everyone mourned for this guest from afar for 1 second in their hearts. Franz has returned to normal, but he is still unhappy with the other party's rudeness. After all, this kind of personal attack and ridicule of family members will make anyone feel uncomfortable. Ruskina, show them a demonstration. Ruskina walked to another piano and ran a fast chromatic scale, as if thousands of wasps were hovering in the air, ready to sting people at any time, giving people a strong feeling of tension, afraid that they would not be able to escape in time. The heart kept rising to the throat, and finally stopped abruptly, and the heart was relieved. The tension and speed of this song were something that no one present had ever felt before. The musicians were glad that they could see the birth of a new song. Everyone present believed that this song would become an inevitable option for piano duels in the future. Applause rang out again, just when everyone was still savoring and admiring. Franz walked to the piano, took out an exquisite box and carefully took out a cigar from it. Franz raised the cigar to show it to everyone, just when everyone was confused. Franz put the cigar on the strings, and the cigar was actually lit by the strings in front of everyone. This time everyone was completely stunned. How fast is the hand speed to make the strings light the cigar? Even Angus and Johann Strauss Jr., who were standing by, were almost shocked. Angus believed that even if he practiced for another 20 years, he would not be able to do such a thing. While everyone was thinking about the scientific nature of this pseudoscience, Ruskina almost couldn't hold it in. Because she saw that Franz deliberately mixed white phosphorus into the tobacco, and repeated the experiment several times, especially in order to find a suitable container. He didn't know how many boxes of different materials he had changed. The first to admit defeat was the honest Johann Strauss Jr. Then Angus also gave up, because he would never be able to do such a miraculous skill. In fact, it was because a brand new song plus the lit cigar were too shocking, which made people lose their proper judgment. Ruskina is indeed a genius, and her hard work and talent are impeccable. But she has not reached the level of Liszt, let alone a miraculous skill. The latest novel is first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Angus thought that it was nothing to lose to such a miraculous skill. But the purpose of his coming here was to become famous and to shock the whole of Vienna. He only tied with a waiter, but in the end he lost to a woman. This was unbearable, but what to do? He soon thought of a way. If the girl in front of him was his girlfriend, wouldn't this problem be solved? The girl's appearance and temperament were not bad. It was better to say that she was a young lady trained by a famous family. Angus's next move really shocked Vienna. He walked up to Ruskina, took off his gloves and threw them away. "Beautiful lady, can I ask you to dance?" The glove fell on Franz's foot. According to the ancient Germanic tradition, this means to issue an invitation to a duel. Chapter 72. Today I will watch a movie and study how foreigners speak. I will update in the evening. Since I haven't read it before, I need to make up for it. Thank you for your support and understanding. Goodbye. Chapter 73. The dragon has a reverse scale. Ruskina did not directly and coldly refuse, because aristocratic etiquette still had to be observed. According to the traditional etiquette of the aristocracy, ladies cannot casually refuse invitations from others. Even if you want to refuse, you must pay attention to propriety and politeness, and be tactful, especially in the public eye. You must not let the other party lose face. "I'm sorry, I'm a little tired," Ruskina wanted to answer like this. But she said, "I'm sorry, I'm just a maid. You need to ask my master's consent." Ruskina subconsciously looked at Franz, and she didn't know why she said that. It's just that she suddenly wanted to see two men fighting. Well, especially two men fighting for themselves. He will care about himself, right? Angus is definitely a high-quality man in this ball, and he has always attracted the attention of women in the venue. Women in this era have no right to education, and entertainment knowledge is very scarce. Although Ruskina sat in the corner, her temperament and appearance were very outstanding, and she also won the attention of many men when she sat next to the crown prince. When Angus walked towards Ruskina to invite her, I don't know how many people were filled with envy and jealousy. Until the moment when Angus's handkerchief fell on Franz's feet. Everyone in the venue was horrified to find that the man had actually invited the crown prince to a duel. Everyone in the venue was looking for weapons that could be used around them. Even the fat Archbishop Rauscher picked up the fork and the fruit plate. Everyone was ready to give this madman a fatal blow at any time. Simond, as the owner of this room, immediately asked the butler to mobilize all the manpower that could be mobilized. At this time, several bigwigs in the venue also took action. "You go now and let everyone come. Go and notify the police and gendarmes. Run as fast as you can. No, call the city defense army. No, no. Go to Archduke Louis immediately and ask him to send the royal guards." A group of butlers and deacons who were used to being bossy rushed out of the venue in a panic like handymen on their first day of work and scattered. Angus didn't care about these things. Everything seemed to be going according to his plan. The people around him were obviously shocked by him. He was now the focus of everyone and the heart of the venue. Angus enjoyed this feeling of being the center of attention. But the girl in front of him didn't play by the rules. She said that a maid had to ask for the consent of the master. What a lie. Was she playing hard to get, or did this young lady like to play master-servant swapping? If she had such a hobby, he would have a lot of fun in the future. Angus looked at Franz, who was just a child, and his hair hadn't even grown out yet. "Do you agree, kid?" Seeing that Franz didn't answer, Angus said, "If you don't say anything, I'll take it as your consent." Angus didn't wait for Ruskna's hand. He decided to take the initiative. Angus reached out to grab Ruskna's hand, but Franz grabbed his wrist. "What are you doing? We have to do adult things. The child should go home and feed." When Angus was in the United States, he always won applause from the audience every time he humiliated others like this. This time, too. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his wrist. "Kid, what are you doing? You hurt me." Angus struggled to break free. Ruskna had been standing there, because she saw the handkerchief that fell on Franz's feet. Then Angus said a lot of incredible things that made her stand there. "I accept your challenge, come on." Franz hooked his finger. Franz was very confident in his fighting ability, but he was restricted by this child's body and could not fully exert it. The people in the venue were really a little panicked. What was the situation of the duel? Everyone rushed up and beat this rude guy to death. At this time, Archbishop Rauscher stood up, waving his wide sleeves, and said loudly, "Today, you will witness this sacred duel together. As a clergyman, I should not be involved in it, but Franz is my student. I bet 10,000 guilders on him. Franz, I believe you are definitely not an ordinary person. God is with you, Ola." The solemn and powerful voice echoed in the hall, and everyone began to place bets. Rauscher had seen Franz sparring with the royal guards, so he had a certain understanding of Franz's strength. Moreover, Rauscher always believed that Franz was a natural saint. How could a saint lose? Rauscher could understand it, but the problem was what was going on with these Austrian nobles. They were really betting, and they even set up a handicap. There were more people betting on foreigners than on Franz, which made Franz very depressed. This is easy to understand. In any case, Franz is just a child. How can a child win a fight with an adult? But they were not worried. After all, the police and the army were about to arrive. And with so many people present, Franz wouldn't really get into trouble. Duel, me and this brat. Angus didn't quite understand the train of thought of these Austrians, but he thought it was a good opportunity to make a name for himself. "Kid, do you know that a dragon has a reverse scale, and touching it means death? You've pissed me off now, and I'm going to teach you a lesson for this beautiful lady." The saying that a dragon has a reverse scale, and touching it means death was said by a group of laborers from the east. Angus thought it was very interesting, so he wrote it down. Now that he said it out loud, it really made sense. "Oh, I'm Nezha, so I'm here to help you loosen up your muscles," Franz replied casually. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Although the people present didn't understand what the two were saying, they knew it was interesting and they all started cheering. The crowd around them quickly dispersed, clearing the ground for Franz and Angus to use as a duel venue. Angus extended a hand, as if intending to shake hands. But Franz knew that it was definitely not that simple, so Franz took a step forward. Angus's extended hand immediately turned into a jab, aiming at Franz's nose. Fights were commonplace and Angus's passed in Boston bars. He had trained specifically for this, and ordinary boxers were no match for him. This sneak attack method was specifically designed to deal with those self-righteous European nobles. When they came up to shake hands, he suddenly turned into a jab, and it almost never missed. If the other party discovered his intention, he would be tempted to take the bait as long as he mocked them a few times to make them lose face. Originally, he would not do this to a child, but today he had already fallen into the hands of a waiter, and he did not want to fall into the hands of a child again. This was his killer move that was always successful. Unfortunately, Franz was prepared, and while dodging, he turned around and kicked back, hitting Angus in the crotch. Thanks to the bug friend Bat Clown for the reward. Chapter 74, Work for Relief. Everything happened in a flash, and before everyone had time to condemn Angus's meanness, Franz completed the counterattack and hit the target. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim, "Too fast." One move decided the outcome. Simon pretended to be in pain and took a breath of cold air. Sigh, that must be painful. Franz's kick made Simon feel very relieved. He secretly decided in his heart that no matter what the Crown Prince wanted to do, he would definitely help him. To everyone's surprise, Angus only stepped back a few steps and didn't fall down. Everyone present also began to whisper to each other. Franz's counterattack was undoubtedly very exciting. But why didn't the American fall down after being hit in the crotch? Could it be that he didn't kick it? How small was that? Many men cast contemptuous eyes on Angus, and the ladies exchanged glances with each other and couldn't help but sneer. Franz sighed in his heart, "What on earth did I kick? How could someone put an iron plate in his underwear? He must be a pervert, or I met a Western version of Lao AI. Whatever it is, I must beat him so hard that he can't stand up." Only Angus himself knew that it was great to come here wearing iron underwear. He is not a Darkman, but Angus had too much fun last night and was tricked. But judging from the result, this saved his life. Angus took 2 steps back, but it still hurt. He jumped twice on the spot, raised his hands flat, then jumped forward with his left foot, and kept his right foot off the ground, and then jumped back with his right foot, and kept his left foot off the ground. The action was repeated faster and faster. Isn't this a boxing jump step? It's very skilled. It must have been practiced for a long time, but it didn't matter to Franz. He just wanted to stretch his muscles. After all, he couldn't be too heavy-handed against the royal guards who usually practiced against him. Angus already knew that the kid in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. He only regretted that the umbrella was taken away, otherwise he would have pulled out the gun hidden in the umbrella and shot. Angus estimated the situation on the field. Everything around that could be used as a weapon had been taken away. But he still had the advantage of weight and strength, and the best way was to attack head-on. Although it was very ungraceful, it was indeed the best solution. After Angus made up his mind, his feet began to move quickly. Angus's movement was full of momentum, and he was also sure of his winning tactics. He had absolute advantages in height, weight, and arm span, and he would not lose as long as he played steadily. It's a good habit to keep an eye on your opponent when moving, Franz smiled. Do you need me to say that? Angus found the problem before he finished speaking. His steps suddenly stopped, and Franz stepped on his knee. It's a pity that this is not a boxing match. Watch your feet. Angus immediately chose a heavy punch with his backhand, a simple and clear choice. It was difficult to dodge at such a close distance, and this kind of strong penetrating back straight punch was difficult for a small-weight opponent like Franz to defend. If he chose to retreat, Angus could quickly follow up. However, Franz responded by blocking sideways and elbowing Angus in the chest. Angus felt pain, but he still wanted to fight back and strangle Franz to throw him out. But the next second, Franz used a rising dragon punch and hit Angus's chin directly. Angus lost his consciousness, but Franz's attack was not over. As Angus' body fell, Franz added an elbow to his neck. The wonderful combo stunned everyone present. Take him away and send him to the hospital for treatment, Franz said, and after beating him up, Franz thought of the Ponzi scheme again. He felt that this person might still be useful. Isn't this kind of arrogant person just what the British like? So Angus was admitted to the hospital accompanied by the military police who came to support him. After losing his temper, it's time to get down to business. The rainy weather in the past month has caused the water level of the Danube to rise sharply. This will soon exceed the capacity of the Turin Dam. Once the dam collapses, the entire Turin plain will suffer. Even Vienna will not be spared, and will continue to cause damage in the middle and lower reaches. Of course, this also includes Budapest in Hungary. In order to build flood control measures for the entire basin, France specially invited Count Széchenyi. The ice flood in 1838 almost destroyed half of Budapest, leaving tens of thousands of people homeless. This included the Petrovich family. The ice flood destroyed his house and fields, as well as the livestock grazing on the grass. He had lent money to acquaintances and relatives before, but no one was willing to pay him back after the disaster. Petrovich was penniless and homeless, and could only live under the eaves of others. His son Petifi had to drop out of school and stay at home to help the butcher to make a living. until Count Szechenyi found their family and promised that as long as Petőfi could pass the entrance examination for Austrian high school and keep his grades above average, their family would get a scholarship of 300 guilders per year. Now they can work in the royal estate. There are many people in Hungary who have suffered the same fate as the Petrovich family. Both Franz and Count Szechenyi knew that it was impossible to save everyone. Franz promised Count Szechenyi to rescue some people, but of course these people must be honest, trustworthy, loyal and reliable, and most importantly, they must speak German. Although Count Szechenyi knew that Franz had his own purpose, he was still very grateful to Franz. Because with Franz's help, many more people could be saved. Count Szechenyi now looked a little haggard, and he was at a disadvantage in the debate with Kossuth. He clearly saw that Hungarians were becoming more and more radical, especially in recent years when natural disasters occurred frequently. The poor were getting poorer, and the rich were getting richer. At this time, Kossuth's theory was more popular, but his own theory was considered outdated and even reactionary. In order to build roads and dredge rivers in Hungary, he almost spent all his savings. The opportunity to build the Austria-Hungary railway that he had finally won was rejected by the Hungarian parliament again. Ice floods, droughts, and this year's floods, everything has to be worried about. He was very supportive of Franz's proposal to build a new dam to prevent future floods. The latest novels are published on 69 Shuba. But he had no money. The Hungarian nobles living in Austria would not spend money on such things. His compatriots living in Hungary also had no money. For a while, he didn't know what to do. This year, due to continuous rainfall, floods have formed in the upper reaches of the Danube in Austria. The number of people affected has exceeded 100,000. Once the flood breaks through the Torun Dam, the affected area will further expand to 500,000. If the flood breaks through the Brunt Dam, the number of people affected will exceed 1 million. The flood is ruthless, but the world is kind. Now we, the nobles of Austria, should play our due role and fulfill our responsibilities to the country and the people. In order to help the affected people overcome difficulties, rebuild their homes, and prevent such things from happening again in the future. The royal family will donate 1 million guilders and establish the Danube Safety Fund. As for Count Szechenyi's worries, in Franz's eyes, it was completely unnecessary. Work for relief is good for both the royal family and Hungary. It can not only solve the refugee problem, but also find suitable labor for the construction of the dam, and gain a wave of public support. Why not do it? In fact, many Hungarian refugees who participated in the construction of the dam secretly vowed to protect this country. As for the Petrovich family who received relief through the entrance examination, they did not live a life of idleness and wait for death on the royal territory. Old Petrovich sent his son to school, and he and his wife also joined the construction of the dam. God's will is unpredictable, and natural disasters are hard to prevent. Little do people know that human hearts are even more unpredictable, and man-made disasters are even harder to prevent. Thanks to the book Franz Iodang 246 for the reward. Because there are too many waters in the front, I can't speed up even if I want to. I will try my best to speed up and finish the previous plot. I'm afraid I have to wait until the second chapter to open 1848. Chapter 75 Special Envoy. Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. Curse this damn weather and those damn Hungarians, Mihajevic cursed. The recent continuous rainfall has caused the water level of the Danube to surge, and the Hungarians upstream have not cared about the lives of the Serbs downstream. When the Hungarians opened the floodgates to release the flood, the Serbs downstream suffered. The surging Danube flooded the farmland and destroyed the bridges. Now even the capital Belgrade is in danger, and the men in every household have to take turns to work on the dam. The enthusiasm of the people is not high, one is not paid, and the other is whipped. The power of King Mihail has long been hollowed out by the 17-man parliament, and not long ago the 17-man parliament officially announced the removal of the incompetent king. The rule of the Obrenovic family ended, which was originally a good thing for everyone in the 17-man parliament. But as soon as King Mihail stepped down, they couldn't wait to divide Serbia. This made the already poor people even more miserable. Under the rule of the Obrenovic family, Serbian merchants enjoyed extremely low tax rates. Thanks to the active merchants, Serbians could finally fill their stomachs. The main sources of cheap food were naturally Hungary and Transylvania. Although the quality of the food produced here was very poor, it was no problem to fill their stomachs. In order to accumulate as much wealth as possible, how could the 17-member parliament let go of the fat sheep of business? The high tariffs discouraged foreign merchants and caused headaches for domestic merchants. A ship of copper ore sold to Austria might not be able to pay the wages of the ship owner and workers. Some members of the 17-member parliament also found that no one was interested in the ore dug out of the mines that they had finally obtained. In order to stabilize their positions, they reached out to the army and the government. A large number of officers and officials were replaced or transferred from their original positions. The whole country fell into chaos, and some people even began to miss the incompetent Grand Duke. Now they are facing extreme weather again, and a large number of refugees need help. However, the country's finances are insufficient, the bureaucratic system is in chaos, and politics is on the verge of collapse. Someone proposed that someone from the Karađorđe family be appointed as the Grand Duke of Serbia. Although the 17-member parliament did not want to share power with others, if the current problem was not solved, there would be a civil war. Angry people, restless officers, and the old party of the Abramović family who had been eyeing Serbia. Inviting the Karađorđe family back could appease people's hearts, and if he could not save Serbia, he could take the blame. At that time, the 17-member parliament would just dismiss another Grand Duke. On the contrary, they had done it before, and it was familiar to them twice. And there was another point, that is, Alexander Karađorđe had been living in Russia and had joined the Russian army as an officer. No one would believe that he had no relationship with Russia. No matter what the final result of this flood was, the food in the Central Plains could not support Serbia through this winter. Ottoman aid was impossible, and now Serbia's treasury had been emptied and there was no money to buy food from Austria. They could only hope for Russia's help, and most of the members of the 17-member parliament had inextricable ties with Russia. There are many people who have climbed to high positions by relying on Russian money and power. Aren't the Russians going to establish a great Slavic empire? Why can't they help us Yugoslav brothers? We now recommend Alexander Karađorđe as the Grand Duke, and this is our token of allegiance. If this is not enough, then we can only cut off the head of the former Grand Duke Mihail and send it to St. Petersburg. I just got some reliable good news. A special envoy of the Tsar is coming to us, and there is also a secret decree from the Tsar, Ilir said in a hoarse voice. He hasn't had a good sleep for several days. Because not long ago, he conspired to kill a Russian intelligence officer who found evidence of his corruption. But for the overwhelmed Serbia, it is indeed good news. Why do you think that Tsar's special envoy came at this time? Said Serbian Chief Justice Lukaski. We have already elected Alexander Karađorđe as the Grand Duke. Is there anything else? I think it is possible that someone else will be nominated as the Grand Duke. After all, Alexander Karađorđe has never been to Serbia. He does not know the situation here at all. The Tsar may want someone who knows the situation in Serbia to be the Grand Duke. This made everyone present think about it. After all, they have all read the pamphlet promoting the Great Slavic Empire, Pan-Slavic Union. What the Tsar wants is not an incomplete Serbia, but a unified kingdom of Serbia, Croatia and Slovenia. The future king of this emerging country is selected by the Tsar. In order to maintain the rule, it seems reasonable to choose a native Serbian as the king. Who the Tsar chooses depends on who has the ability. It is unlikely to meet the Tsar, but they can meet the Tsar's envoy. These bigwigs who stand at the pinnacle of Serbia's power are as anxious as freshmen who go to the teacher's office for the first time. Their future prospects and money prospects are all in the hands of this envoy. Although Serbia was a vassal state of the Ottoman Empire, its independence was guaranteed by Russia. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that Serbia was Russia's sphere of influence and a pawn of Russia in the Balkans. At this time, a tall military police captain ran in and said, "My lords, I think I found this special envoy." Two Russian guests just checked into the Carney Hotel. They were dressed elegantly and spent lavishly. It was obvious that they were not ordinary people. I have confirmed with my Russian friends that one of them is Earl Hawkins, who is in charge of the entire Serbian intelligence network. Then there is another one, and that must be the special envoy. I will call Unica and her sister to come and serve the special envoy well. Unica and her sister are both famous beauties in the upper-class circles of Serbia. My lords, I'm afraid, there is no need for that. The special envoy is a woman, the military police captain stammered. Woman? Are you sure? Yes, and someone heard Count Hawkins call her sir. How is that possible? That's not certain. I heard that the sir who is in charge of the Russian Special Section 3 has the greatest hobby of training his mistresses into female agents. This special envoy might be the mistress of that sir. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. What should we do? Go find some strong guys. Don't be stupid, bring more gold and silver jewelry. In the Carney Hotel, Yeladonia took off her coat elegantly, revealing her snow-white skin. She picked up the wine glass elegantly and looked at the waiters around her with a smile. The waiters around her lowered their heads to avoid embarrassment. Only Count Hawkins was talking to Yeladonia in code. Are you here for fun or business? Oh? Is there a difference? Yeladonia smiled, supporting her chin. You crazy woman, if they knew we were lying to them, they would kill us, for sure. You and your new master are playing big, no one can stop you. Count Hawkins was a little mad, and in a fit of anger he accidentally tore his wound, and it hurt so much that he almost cried. Yeladonia drank the contents of the cup in one gulp. That's not necessarily true, dear. My new master is more playful than you think. Is your leg okay now? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.